Hashira suggests harvesting the new crops, as Carmilla excitedly flies off to grab a basket. Lydia tells Hashira that their lives are finally fulfilling, all thanks to his incredible power. But he offers a warm smile, insisting that their success is due to everyone's combined efforts. Looking out at their home, he adds that there is one other vital reason for their prosperity. With a joyous grin, he declares that it's all thanks to the plant god's divine blessing. Lydia kneels in the lush garden, sharing in this moment of pure, serene contentment. Suddenly, the scene shatters, revealing a shocked Hashira in a suit as he remembers the story actually begins with his death. He sits alone and disoriented within a vast white void, wondering where on earth he is. A radiant goddess appears, introducing herself as Elpharis, the benevolent plant god. A bewildered Hashira introduces himself, struggling to wrap his head around this impossible situation. Elpharis offers a kind smile, acknowledging just how overwhelming this must be for him. She gestures toward him, calmly telling him to relax and approach her. Together, they stand in the heart of the vast, empty expanse of the divine realm. Hashira lets out a cry of shock as vibrant grass suddenly begins to sprout from the featureless ground. Thick, woody roots burst through the floor of the void, reshaping the empty space. As a table and chairs instantly grow from the earth, she invites the amazed man to take a seat. Suddenly, a sharp voice interrupts, calling out Elpharis's name with a stern, authoritative tone. A stern, horned god appears, warning her not to meddle with a human's personal domain. Elpharis dismisses his concerns with a wave, inviting both the god and the human to join her. The god lets out an exasperated sigh, muttering about what a massive pain this whole ordeal is. Elphira introduces the imposing newcomer as Arus, the god who governs the earth. She explains that they are currently in the divine realm, the celestial home of the gods. Confused, Hashira asks why he was summoned here, especially since she claimed it was at her request. Elphira's cheerful demeanor instantly vanishes, her gaze dropping into a somber silence. She delivers the crushing truth. The reason he's here is that he has passed away. Hashira's eyes widen in pure horror as he struggles to process the reality of his death. A fragmented memory flashes back to a lonely pedestrian overpass in the middle of the night. A single abandoned shoe sits on the concrete, a grim testament to his final, exhausting moments. He recalls collapsing on his way home, his lifeless body left cold on the pavement. Back in the divine realm, Elphira watches his painful realization with a heavy heart. Hashira clutches his head in agony as the full weight of his demise rushes back to him. The earth god looks on with a stern, impassive expression, confirming his tragic fate. Hashira looks up, pale and sweating as the crushing reality finally sinks in. Arus explains the natural cycle of souls, noting that Elphira personally begged him to intervene. When asked why she'd do such a thing, Elphira excitedly confesses that it's because she likes him. Hashira is left completely stunned by her sudden and blunt confession. Elphira then jogs his memory, asking if he remembers repairing a small, broken shrine as a young boy. He recalls his grandmother telling him that a harvest deity once resided within those ruins. He realizes the shrine was near his grandparents' home, and Elphira confirms it was her dwelling. He finally understands that his simple act of kindness helped restore her fading power. Elphira offers a tender smile, explaining that her resurrection was only possible because of his actions. She confesses that his past kindness moved her, and she's been guarding him from the shadows ever since. A faint smile crosses Hashira's face as the weight of their fated bond finally starts to sink in. However, his warmth quickly fades as a haunting memory begins to cloud his mind. He's pulled back to the grim day of his parents' funeral, staring at the cold flickering of their altar. He vividly remembers the crushing weight of comforting his two sobbing sisters amidst their shared tragedy. Looking down in despair, he can't help but wonder why fate dealt him such a miserable hand. He grits his teeth as the sheer exhaustion of his struggles threatens to break his spirit. Overcome with guilt, Elphira apologizes for being powerless to intervene during his darkest hours. Hashira takes in her apology, his expression shifting into one of quiet contemplation. A serene, surprisingly mature smile graces his lips as he meets her gaze. He gently reassures her that it's okay, releasing her from the burden of any perceived blame. He reflects that it's hypocritical to only demand divine intervention when things get tough. Elphira is moved by his maturity, but the other god, Horus, merely scoffs at his words. Horus points an accusing finger, mocking the Japanese tendency to only pray when it suits them. He labels the behavior as peak selfishness, leaving Hashira to offer a bashful, awkward apology. Suddenly, Horus erupts with a grand proposal. He can be reborn into a brand new world. Horus explains that this is an isekai, a world filled with diverse cultures and mythical races. He clarifies that this is a soul transfer, but notes that if he refuses, there is only one other path. That grim alternative, he states, is for Hashira's soul to be erased from existence forever. Elphira solemnly warns him that this reincarnation offers no guarantee of a happy life. If he simply wishes to rest in peace, she promises not to force a new life upon him. With a gaze full of gentle gravity, she asks him what his heart truly desires. Hashira hesitates, his eyes downcast as he weighs the monumental choice before him. Elphira waits patiently, her hands clasped as she anticipates his final decision. She rises from her seat and walks silently toward the weary warrior. Standing before the seated Hashira, her long hair flows gracefully behind her. She admits that what she's about to ask of him is purely her own selfish wish. Her expression softens, radiating a deep and personal hope for his future. She explains that because his past was so agonizing, she is desperate to help him now. Taking his hands, she tells him she wants him to live his next life with total freedom. To his utter shock, hot tears begin to well up in his weary eyes. He touches his cheek in confusion, wondering why he's suddenly overcome with emotion. Elphira opens her arms wide, offering him a warm and comforting embrace. She pulls him close, whispering that he has endured far too much hardship for one soul. As she gently strokes his hair, Hashira's stoic composure finally shatters. A fleeting, happy memory of his mother and sister flashes through his mind. He collapses against her, letting out a lifetime of suppressed grief in desperate sobs. Time seems to stand still as he finally releases the immense pain he's carried. Eventually, a deeply embarrassed Hashira apologizes for his sudden emotional outburst. Elphira offers a comforting smile, reassuring him that everything is perfectly fine. Ars interjects, his expression unreadable as he asks for a final decision. With newfound determination, Hashira shouts his answer. He wants to be transferred. Ars gives a stoic nod of approval while Elphira beams with pure delight. Elphira asks what he would like to do, offering their divine assistance for his journey. Hashira takes a moment to thoughtfully consider the kind of life he truly desires. His eyes suddenly widen as a clear, simple vision manifests in his mind. He pictures a peaceful life in the countryside, an idyllic future laid out before him. He wants a relaxed existence surrounded by nature, just like in his old home. Ars notes this is Elphira's specialty, which she proudly confirms as the goddess of art. The two deities stand before him, ready to grant his humble wish at last. Elphira declares that she will bestow her divine protection upon him. A radiant light erupts from her palms as she summons her celestial power. A glowing orb of pure energy drifts from her hands and merges into Hashira's chest. Ars observes that with this blessing, he'll never have to worry about food again. Hashira examines his hands, noting that he doesn't feel any different just yet. Elphira reassures him that he'll feel the power once his new body is fully formed. She mentions there is one more thing, summoning a final gift of shimmering light. She presents him with an ornate, powerful-looking staff. Hashira accepts the divine tool, curiously asking her what its purpose is. The goddess, Elphira, explains that this divine tool will allow him to channel her blessing. She adds with a smile that it can change its size, so it will never be a burden. Hiraku grips the simple staff, marveling at just how incredibly convenient it is. The god takes the staff for a moment, noting the immense power surging within it. He points toward Hiraku, announcing that it's finally time for the reincarnation to begin. A radiant magic circle erupts at Hiraku's feet as he prepares for his grand journey. The god confirms his destination is a land rich with nature, and Hiraku happily agrees. With a sincere smile, Hiraku admits he was never one for crowded places anyway. Elphira calls out his name one last time as he begins to ascend into the pillar of light. The two deities bid him a final farewell, wishing him luck and success in his next life. Hiraku offers a warm smile and heartfelt thanks to both Elphira and the god. Glancing down, he watches the deities shrink away as he rises further into the light. He wakes with a soft groan, his eyes fluttering open as he wonders where he's ended up. Sitting up, he realizes he's been dropped right in the middle of a dense, unfamiliar forest. He springs to his feet in surprise, noticing his clothes have been completely transformed. He examines his sturdy new attire, practical gear perfectly suited for a farmer's life. Standing atop a massive root, he is awestruck by the staggering scale of the trees. Passing by strange crystalline growths, he takes in the alien yet beautiful scenery. The forest canopy towers high above him, a vast and wild new world waiting to be explored. From a high vantage point, he realizes this isn't just a forest, it's a massive, untamed frontier. Pushing through the dense foliage, he realizes this wilderness is far more untamed than he ever imagined. He understands that carving out a life here will be an incredibly grueling challenge. He pauses, a sudden realization striking him as he gazes down at his own hand. An idea takes root. He needs to clear the land before he can even think of building a home. Raising his divine tool, he feels a surge of instinctual knowledge guiding his every move. With a deafening crash, a colossal tree is leveled by an invisible, overwhelming force. Sentient vines erupt from the earth, magically twisting to clear the surrounding area in seconds. Surveying the aftermath, he realizes this incredible power is the true blessing of the plant god. A spark of inspiration hits him. He can wield this power just like Alfred once did. He closes his eyes, focusing his will and channeling a deeply cherished, comforting memory. He visualizes the rustic house where he lived with his grandparents as a young child. Wooden beams and planks begin to manifest, assembling themselves in midair with a rhythmic clatter. The construction proceeds at an impossible speed, the house rapidly taking its final shape. He stands before the finished structure, stunned that an entire home was erected in a mere instant. Staff in hand, he slides open the familiar door and steps into his brand new sanctuary. A warm smile spreads across his face, overcome by a powerful wave of nostalgia. He surveys the empty yet hauntingly familiar wooden interior of his new home. He quickly notes that his divine power didn't extend to furnishing the inside for him. Reality sets in. If he wants to survive, he's going to need a kitchen and a bath. Stroking his chin, he realizes his immediate priority must be securing a reliable source of water. Looking up at the rafters, he steels his resolve for his very first task in this new world. Stepping outside his makeshift home, he sets off immediately to begin his exploration. However, the forest's dense undergrowth poses a formidable challenge to his progress. He finds himself completely hemmed in by the thick, ancient woods of his new domain. He marches forward with purpose, his divine tool emitting a soft, ethereal glow. Miraculously, the tall grasses and plants part before him, clearing a path as he walks. He gazes around in awe, stunned by this unexpected perk of his divine blessing. A grin spreads across his face. The plant god's power makes navigation incredibly effortless. Kneeling down, he's grateful to find his blessing also acts as a guide for identifying local flora. He quickly identifies two edible vegetables, the onion-like ayanoko and the radish-like tobihiko. He happily gathers his harvest, thrilled to find exotic produce he never could have found back home. His eyes then land on a tree bearing familiar-looking fruit, which he identifies as a gravalingo. He takes a large, juicy bite, the flavor exploding in his mouth with a satisfying crunch. The gravalingo is a local staple, renowned for its refreshing tartness and sweet aftertaste. His face beams with pure joy as he marvels at just how delicious the fruit is. He decides to stock up, noting how perfect they are for quenching his thirst on the go. He fills the woven basket on his back with a generous supply of the fresh gravalingos. Suddenly, he pauses his foraging as the distinct sound of rushing water catches his ear. Following the sound, he emerges from the thicket onto a small, clear forest path. Peering out from behind a bush, his eyes widen in shock at the sight before him. He's greeted by a breathtaking coastline stretching beneath a bright, sprawling sky. Overjoyed at finally finding a water source, he scrambles down the jagged rocks. Wading into the shallows, he's stunned to see fish darting through the crystal-clear water. He sets down his bucket, mesmerized by the pristine waves and the abundance of life within them. He realizes he could easily secure a meal here if only he had a hook and line. Suddenly, the rhythmic sound of hooves treading on grass breaks the silence. Ducking behind a bush, he focuses on the rustling coming from nearby. He carefully parts the foliage, desperate to get a glimpse of the mysterious visitor. His eyes widen as he spots a majestic, unfamiliar creature standing just a few yards away. It's a stunning, emerald-hued deer with a single horn, peacefully drinking from the shore. Water droplets fall from its muzzle as it enjoys a quiet moment by the water's edge. Observing its features, he concludes that this majestic beast must be a herbivore. Suddenly, a primal craving hits him. Vegetables are fine, but he's starving for real meat. He recalls an old hunter from his neighborhood who once taught him the fundamentals of butchering. He lowers his stance, his face becoming a mask of pure concentration. His expression hardens with resolve as he decides to make this creature his first hunt. The deer's ear twitches sharply. It senses his presence and bolts before he can strike. He immediately gives chase, impressed by the creature's lightning-fast instincts. He thrusts his staff forward, determined not to let his high-protein dinner escape. Suddenly, a net of thick, powerful vines erupts from the tip of his divine tool. The vines lash out with expert precision, ensnaring the fleeing deer mid-stride. The animal struggles desperately before collapsing, tangled and helpless in the tall grass. He approaches his prize calmly, as the dust from the struggle finally settles. His divine tool shifts shape, its tip narrowing into a razor-sharp blade. With a somber expression, he offers a quiet prayer for the creature's sacrifice. Above, birds drift lazily over the vast forest canopy under a serene evening sky. Kneeling by the shore, he prepares to begin the arduous task of processing the meat. His tool transforms once more as he reminds himself never to risk eating it raw. He starts the butchering process, carefully bleeding the animal in the cool, flowing water. Wiping his brow, he sighs in relief now that the initial preparation is finally finished. He follows the traditional butchering methods, visualizing the steps with clinical precision. He feels a wave of gratitude for the survival lessons he learned from his old mentor. Examining the net he's woven, he's glad he paid attention to the old hunter's tales. Looking at his haul, he realizes his new life is currently more about survival than farming. The secured carcass rests on the sand, ready for the long trek back to his base. Taking a well-deserved break, he sits on the rocks and enjoys a sweet grawling fruit. He reflects on his newfound freedom, far removed from the deadlines of his former life. As he watches the sunset over the water, a profound sense of peace washes over him. With the sun dipping below the horizon, he decides it's finally time to head home. A look of quiet determination settles on his face, ready to face whatever tomorrow brings. The sun glints off the vast, sparkling sea as a bird soars high above. He stretches, filled with hope that he can build a truly fulfilling life in this place. With a bright smile, he decides it's finally time to head back home. As he treks back, he mentally catalogs the day's successful harvest. His mental list details his bounty: Tobihiko, Ayanoko, Gravalingo, and the green deer. As evening falls, shadows begin to stretch over the roof of his new home. Inside, he strains with every ounce of strength, desperately trying to start a fire by hand. With a final, desperate cry of exertion, he pushes his body to its absolute limit. He collapses in defeat, the shattered fire-starting tool lying uselessly by his side. He laments how easy his grandpa made it look, cursing his own lack of technique. Gazing out the door, he realizes with dread that pitch darkness is fast approaching. He tries to recall old lessons, but a bizarre thought interrupts. Increase the hands. This instinctual yet strange idea leaves him momentarily speechless and utterly confused. He questions this sudden knowledge, wondering how he could possibly add hands using wood. Deciding to take the leap, he sits and focuses his power, wondering if this is the key. A thick vine begins to twist and surge rapidly from the wooden floorboards. He watches in stunned silence as the plant life begins to coalesce before his eyes. His eyes widen in sheer disbelief as the creation grows to a massive scale. A massive wooden golem now towers over him, its size nothing short of incredible. He kneels before the giant, asking if it can help him hold the base steady. The silent golem stares down at the request before giving a slow, stoic nod of approval. With the golem's assistance, thick plumes of smoke begin to curl from the friction of the wood. He leans in close, gently coaxing the glowing ember to life within the tinder. With a satisfying pop, a small flame finally dances to life from the kindling. A triumphant grin spreads across his face as he shouts that he's finally conquered fire. He lets out a sigh of relief, grateful to have secured a beacon against the encroaching darkness. But when he turns to thank his helper, he realizes the golem has mysteriously vanished. He eventually finds it sulking on the porch, wondering why it retreated so far away. A realization hits him, and he asks if the stone creature is actually afraid of the flames. He offers his thanks once more, reassuring the golem that it's perfectly safe. Beneath the silver glow of the crescent moon, smoke drifts peacefully from the chimney. Inside, the hearth crackles warmly, serving as a cozy sanctuary in the dead of night. With warmth and light finally secured, it's time to focus on his next priority: dinner. He inspects his harvest, which consists of several strange yet edible-looking plants. His haul includes exotic mozoru ferns, vibrant pink cherries, and a fruit known as amiguki. He notes that the amiguki requires peeling, reminding him of a sugarcane stalk. As for the pink cherries, they look almost identical to the ones from his old world. He wants to boil the wild vegetables for safety, but he's immediately hit with a new problem. Lacking a pot, he's forced to resign himself to a dinner of only fruit for the night. He takes a tentative bite of a cherry and is instantly blown away by how delicious it is. As he eats, a sudden flash of inspiration strikes him. He realizes he could carve a stone pot to finally put his divine tool to the test. However, a heavy wave of exhaustion hits him, followed by a massive yawn. Realizing he's completely spent, he decides the masonry can wait until tomorrow. His most pressing concern now is finding a comfortable place to crash for the night. With a flicker of magic, he summons a massive pile of fresh plush leaves. It might be simple, but it'll serve as the perfect makeshift bed. He dives into the foliage, delighted by how surprisingly soft and fluffy it feels. He gives himself a mental pat on the back for such a clever and cozy solution. Before drifting off, he bids goodnight to his silent guardian standing watch outside. He wakes the next morning to a breathtaking view of the mist-shrouded mountains. Sliding the door open, he steps onto the porch to greet the day with a deep stretch. A satisfied groan escapes him as he loosens his muscles in the crisp morning air. The leaf bed worked like a charm, even if he does smell a bit like a fresh lawn. With a busy day ahead, he finds his golem already hard at work sweeping the porch. He maps out his chores, gather food, butcher the deer, and finally craft that pot. But before he tackles any of that, he has a much more exciting project in mind. He enthusiastically declares his plan to plant seeds and kickstart his very own farm. With his new goals set, he makes his way toward the clearing he prepared earlier. He summons his divine tool, and it instantly shifts into a sturdy, heavy-duty shovel. Hiraku surveys the small plot he's marked out for his first experimental field. Silhouetted against the blazing sun, he raises his shovel high, ready to get to work. The divine tool slices through the hardened earth as if it were soft butter. He's genuinely amazed at how a simple-looking wooden tool can tear through the soil so easily. He continues the grueling task of tilling the ground to make room for his new crops. As he works, his silent golem companion emerges from the forest edge to join him. Surprised, he asks if the golem wants to help, and the giant responds with a firm nod. Impressed, he uses his powers to craft a simple wooden hoe from a nearby branch. He hands the new tool to the golem, instructing his new partner to work by his side. Eventually, he lets out a satisfied sigh while surveying the massive patch of land they've tilled. Standing beside the stone giant, he realizes they've somehow finished the entire job before noon. Acknowledging the golem's infinite stamina, he playfully declares it the winner of their race. With the field fully prepared, it's finally time to move on to sowing the seeds. The golem uses its massive finger to gently press a single tiny seed into the dirt. Hiraku patiently demonstrates the proper planting technique to his oversized apprentice. One by one, he carefully places each seed into the rich, nutrient-dense earth. However, they still need water, so the duo heads down to the crystal-clear shore. While Hiraku takes a moment to rest, the golem wades into the shallows to fill their buckets. The golem effortlessly hauls the heavy containers back toward the freshly planted field. Every wooden bucket is filled to the brim with fresh, life-giving water for the future harvest. Utilizing its versatility, his divine tool shifts into a sprinkler to nourish the fresh seeds. Now that the prep work is done, it's time to put his divine blessing to the ultimate test. He recalls that on Earth, cultivating quality apples requires years of specialized expertise. He can't help but wonder what happens when that knowledge is infused with raw, divine power. Suddenly, the earth trembles as his mana surges deep beneath the surface. A tiny sprout bursts through the dirt, growing with supernatural speed. In the blink of an eye, the sapling matures into a sturdy, healthy tree. He stands back in awe, stunned by this miraculous and impossibly fast rate of growth. However, he notices the surrounding soil looks drained. His power is simply too taxing. Realizing this ability depletes the land, he resolves to use it much more sparingly. With the hard work finished, he collapses onto a nearby rock for a well-deserved breather. He gazes up through the canopy, finally enjoying a moment of hard-earned peace and quiet. Close by, his golem companion is already busy tending to the newly grown saplings. A sense of serenity washes over him as he watches his creation diligently at work. He finds comfort in the silent camaraderie shared with his mechanical friend, but his mind soon drifts back to the family he left behind, wondering if they're doing okay. A pang of guilt strikes him, making him feel as though he's abandoned his responsibilities. Just as the melancholy takes hold, his stomach interrupts with a thunderous, insistent growl. He gives a wry smile, realizing that despite his heavy heart, his body still has needs. He slaps his cheeks to snap out of the somber mood, refocusing his mind on the present. Filled with a new day's resolve, Hashira calls for his golem to join him. Together, they set out to forage for new crops and retrieve the deer they hunted. However, Hashira decides that calling his companion Golem is far too impersonal. He playfully suggests the name Kotaro, only to receive a swift, heavy bonk on the head, rubbing the sore spot. He wonders why that name was met with such violence. He pauses for a moment, racking his brain to come up with something better. With a bright smile, he offers up a new suggestion. Lent. He asks his companion if this name is more to its liking. Lent gives a slow, stoic nod of approval, and Hashira declares the matter settled. He formally welcomes Lent as they venture deeper into the dense woods. A caption highlights the day's milestones: starting a farm and gaining a family. Reaching a rocky outcrop, he asks Lent to help carry some quarried stone. His versatile divine tool instantly transforms into a razor-sharp knife. He presses the blade against the hard rock to test its edge. To his absolute shock, the knife carves through the solid stone like butter. He realizes he'll need to be incredibly careful with such a dangerously powerful tool. He decides to focus on practicing his powers to better master his capabilities. Lent begins effortlessly stacking the heavy, perfectly cut blocks of stone. Hashira watches in awe, grateful for Lent's truly monstrous strength. As they work, he kneels down to examine a mysterious small plant. Suddenly, Hiraku freezes as something nearby catches his eye. He notices Lent has stopped in his tracks and asks what's caught his attention. Lent points a wooden finger toward a peculiar tree laden with strange fruit. Hiraku approaches, wondering if he's just stumbled upon a brand new crop. An informative diagram reveals that this origo fruit is packed with natural oil. He has a sudden epiphany. This is clearly this world's version of an olive. Immediately, his mind begins racing with endless new culinary possibilities. He then spots several other varieties of wild vegetables growing nearby. He realizes that having both oil and wild greens can only mean one thing. With a grin, he triumphantly declares his intention to fry up some tempura. Even without proper seasoning, he knows the natural bitterness will taste incredible. He gathers enough for a feast and carefully collects seedlings for his garden. Eager to start an origo grove, he tells Lent it's finally time to head home. The duo arrives back at the homestead just as clouds begin to drift across the sky. Once home, Hiraku wastes no time and prepares for his next major project. Harnessing his divine power, he commands solid wooden planks to rise from the earth. The timber assembles itself perfectly into a simple, sturdy structure. He inspects the craftsmanship, satisfied with his brand new butchering shed. He asks Lent to help move the deer carcass into the newly finished building. He directs his powerful companion to hoist the beast onto the workstation. As Lent hoists the carcass, Hashira prepares a wooden bucket. He sets to the grueling but essential task of skinning the beast. Lent keeps the deer steady while Hashira works with surgical precision. Wiping sweat from his brow, he focuses intently on the arduous labor. He sighs, knowing this would be impossible without Lent's incredible strength. He even makes Lent promise to assist on all their future hunts. Once the butchering is done, the next challenge is meat preservation. He decides that digging an underground cellar is their best bet. Turning to his loyal companion, he calls out the beast's new name. He tasks Lent with excavating a cellar large enough to house their haul. While his partner digs, he turns his attention to the new seedlings. An adorable chibi version of him breaks down the first step, digging the hole. Next, he instructs to fill it with water and let the soil absorb it. Then, carefully nestle the seedling inside, minding the delicate roots. Gently pack the soil around the base to anchor the plant firmly. He concludes the tutorial by giving the sapling a refreshing soak. To give the new life a head start, he prepares to activate his unique skill. Channeling his mana, he unleashes his growth promotion ability. The plants react instantly, radiating a soft, ethereal glow. He warmly encourages his new garden to grow strong and vibrant. Hiraku now has 8 different types of crops flourishing in his fields. Even so, he decides he should expand his farmland even further. A brief passage of time marks the steady progress of his growing homestead. Peaceful clouds drift lazily over the roof of his newly built home. He greets Lu, asking if the underground cellar is finally complete. Lu looks exceptionally proud of the construction she's just finished. Hiraku eagerly steps forward to see the results of her labor for himself. He's amazed at how spacious and well-constructed the new cellar is. He praises Lu for building such a magnificent and sturdy storeroom. He asks Lu to install some shelves so they can move the meat inside. He shivers, noting how the underground air is perfectly chilled for storage. He quickly finishes his tasks, his mind already focused on preparing dinner. The cellar door shuts tight with a solid, satisfying thud. As the sun sets, The day's hard labor finally comes to an end. Rubbing his weary eyes, he starts brainstorming the evening's menu. With a triumphant shout, he presents a magnificent cut of fresh venison. He's ecstatic to finally eat meat, especially a prime shoulder roast. Lu silently laments the fact that they're still missing salt and pepper. Hiraku decides to sear the meat on a hot stone slab using a bit of oil. He considers refining the oil further, but he's simply too hungry to wait. He quickly realizes that cracking the thick rind of the orgo fruit will be no easy feat. He weighs the option of using a stone, but fears it'll create a sticky, unmanageable mess. Just as he's about to give up, a stroke of genius strikes him. He turns to Lent, asking him to crush the fruit while praising his companion's unwavering reliability. He holds out a wooden bowl for Lent to funnel the freshly extracted oil into. While Lent handles the heavy lifting, he gets to work prepping the wild greens for a side dish. He checks the stone pot and is satisfied to see the water reaching a rolling boil. He's relieved he can blanch the vegetables to ensure they're properly sterilized and safe to eat. He carefully plans out the best way to prepare the variety of wild greens he's gathered. He settles on serving the aonoko and tobihiko he found earlier that day. With a single effortless squeeze of his powerful grip, Lent pulverizes the fruit. Hashira thanks his partner, genuinely awestruck by his monstrous strength. He takes the bowl of oil, noting it's a bit unrefined, but it'll serve its purpose perfectly. He quickly blanches the greens before plunging them into cold water to stop the cooking. Finally, it's time for the main event, grilling the venison. He carefully places the thick steak onto the searing, oil-coated stone slab. The immediate sizzle is pure music to his ears, a true culinary triumph. He finds it a bit tricky to manage the intensity of the open flame. After some careful heat management, the meal enters its final stage of preparation. With a beam of pure pride, Hashira announces that his masterpiece is finally complete. The magnificent dish is served, venison grilled in origo oil, and it looks absolutely mouth-watering. Before diving in, he offers a respectful prayer of thanks for the bounty. He turns to Lent, wondering if the golem requires food or perhaps just some water. With a soft splash, Lent settles its massive root-like feet into a bucket of water. Hiraku realizes that as a plant-based life form, Lent likely thrives on just water and sunlight. He settles in, pleased that they can enjoy a meal together in their own way. With a final clap of his hands, he declares it's officially time to feast. He begins with the wild vegetables he foraged earlier that afternoon. Using his chopsticks, he picks up a piece of the onion-like anoko for a taste. He takes his first bite of the fresh produce, eager to experience a brand new flavor. He's instantly won over by its crisp texture and elegant sweetness, which shines even without seasoning. Next is the tobihiko, noting its distinct bitterness would be a perfect match for some sake. Finally, he turns his attention to the main event, the perfectly seared venison. He grimaces slightly, offering a quick apology to the goddess Elphora for using her divine gift as simple cutlery. He lifts a tender morsel of meat, his anticipation building with every second. With a satisfied hum, he takes a hearty bite of the venison he tracked and hunted himself. His eyes widen in pure shock as he realizes just how incredibly tender the meat is. The flavor is remarkably clean with zero gaminess, letting the meat's natural quality take center stage. He does note a slight grassy bitterness from the oil, making a mental note to refine his extraction process. A look of pure satisfaction washes over him as he finally savors the rewards of his hard work. Sitting by the fire, he reflects that this life feels less like farming and more like hardcore survival camping. He wonders if he'll one day look back with nostalgia on these intense, wild flavors. A summary of his daily progress scrolls across the screen under the vast, moonlit sky. The following morning, Hiraku stands in the forest, grunting as he channels his power with intense focus. With a sharp cry of effort, he thrusts his divine tool forward with unwavering determination. He hitches a ride on a massive log as it rockets forward with explosive speed. His goal was to simply extend the wood to create a new method of transportation. However, the sudden G-force sends him reeling, arms flailing wildly as he loses his footing. He lets out a startled yelp as he's bucked off his runaway creation. He crashes into an unceremonious heap, lamenting his poor sense of balance. He muses that if he could just master this technique, traveling would become a breeze. He figures that if he could just stabilize the rear, the idea might actually be viable. Dusting himself off, he confidently decides to revisit this experiment another day. He shifts his focus back to the daily grind of maintaining his homestead. In the fields, a single weed begins to quiver and shake in the soil. With a satisfying pop, the weed yanks its own roots from the earth at his command. Across the entire plot, the weeds simply keel over, clearing the field with magical ease. He kneels, noting how effortless gardening becomes when you have total control over plant life. He smiles while inspecting his crops, admiring just how healthy and robust they've become. Thanks to his divine blessing, they'll be ready for harvest in just a matter of days. Aware that fruit trees typically take years to mature, he's stunned by their supernatural growth rate. After boiling his first harvest, he takes a bite and realizes these vegetables are on a whole different level. He ponders why his cultivated crops taste significantly better than anything found in the wild. He concludes that this superior flavor must be a direct perk of his divine blessing. Surveying his orchard, he decides that as long as the fruit is delicious, he won't question the logic. Fired up with motivation, he vows to expand the entire field before the sun hits its peak. He stretches out his arms, psyching himself up to give this grueling task his absolute all. However, he suddenly pauses as the sheer scale of the labor begins to sink in. He grimaces, acknowledging that tilling a fresh field single-handedly is a recipe for a broken back. Staring at the overturned soil, he admits that honest farm work is far more brutal than he imagined. He regains his composure, figuring that with a divine blessing, he doesn't actually need to kill himself working. Just then, a wisp of savory, fragrant smoke drifts past, instantly grabbing his attention. He catches the scent, recognizing the rich, smoky aroma coming from his latest project. Seizing the chance for a break, he follows the trail to check on the progress of his smokehouse. He reaches the small wooden shed, where Lin has been standing guard with unwavering focus. He gives a quick wave, thanking his silent companion for keeping a watchful eye on the curing process. He slowly creaks open the door, his heart racing as he wonders if his first attempt was actually a success. Inside, the meat hangs in perfect condition, prompting him to marvel at the gorgeous, rich color. He asks Lin to help him transport the smoked haul to a breezy spot so it can properly air out. Resting on the porch, he realizes there's no way he can finish this massive amount of meat alone. He realizes that while smoking preserves the meat, he's still uncertain about its actual shelf life. Then a horrifying realization hits him. Without any seasoning, this meat is going to be incredibly bland. He collapses in comical despair, wailing that he's never craved the salt of the sea more than in this moment. Desperate, he wonders if he can scavenge some rock salt or even just a few wild herbs. He decides to scout the far side of his property, hoping to find some much-needed supplies. He asks Lint to grab a basket, and the loyal golem responds with a silent, dutiful nod. He assures Lint they won't wander too deep into the brush since the sun is already beginning to set. The duo ventures into the woods, on a mission to find anything that might improve their meager meals. As they trek through the foliage, he notes that this specific area is absolutely overrun with weeds. Suddenly, he freezes, his curiosity piqued by something peculiar hidden in the brush. His blessing kicks in, instantly identifying 3 distinct types of rare medicinal herbs buried in the undergrowth. He's stunned to discover that valuable medicine has been hiding in plain sight amongst the common weeds this entire time. Kneeling down, he's thrilled to find that his blessing also provides detailed instructions on how to prepare them. He realizes he needs to establish a dedicated herb garden now, before an emergency strikes and it's too late. Using his tools with surgical precision, he begins digging up the plants for future transplanting. As he works, a new and strangely familiar fragrance catches the breeze and drifts toward him. He freezes, his face contorting in shock as he recognizes that deeply nostalgic scent. He's overcome with joy to find a patch of dokudami, a plant straight from his old world. Waves of emotion wash over him. He never expected to be reunited with such a familiar piece of his past. A warm memory resurfaces of his grandmother brewing dokudami tea for him when he was just a child. Kneeling by the patch of flowers, he feels a wave of gratitude for this unexpected link to his past life. He carefully gathers a bundle of the plants, determined to transplant them into his own garden. A smile creeps across his face. Even without finding any seasonings, this discovery is a massive win. He decides to take only what he needs for now, planning to return for the rest later. But his foraging trip isn't over yet, as a strange, bud-like fruit catches his eye. Examining the oversized fruit, he wonders if it's filled with something soft like cotton. His blessing identifies it as chewy fruit, a staple food often used as a bread substitute. He's absolutely overjoyed, as he had already resigned himself to a life without rice or wheat. He gently peels back the outer leaves, finally revealing the prize hidden within. He pulls out the soft, dough-like pulp, noting its striking resemblance to mochi. While it looks like mochi, he notes that the texture feels much more like steamed bread. With a wide grin, he decides it's finally time for the all-important taste test. Taking a bite, he's pleasantly surprised by the fruit's gentle, natural sweetness. The texture, he realizes, is almost identical to raw dough made from rice flour. His mind immediately races with culinary possibilities, from grilling it to tossing it into a hot soup. He decides to gather a massive haul to plant in a brand new, dedicated field. Then, a brilliant idea strikes. He'll serve this mochi fruit alongside his smoked meat. Fueled by excitement for tomorrow's feast, he continues to gather as much as he can. But as he tosses another piece into his basket, he suddenly freezes, catching a foul scent in the air. A sudden, chilling realization strikes him as he instinctively clutches his collar. He had been working so hard that his quick daily washes just weren't cutting it anymore. Driven by a sudden, desperate urge for cleanliness, he declared his need for a real bath. Turning to his silent companion, he announced, "Lent, we're going to the lake." With a determined grin, he set off toward the nearby water. The wooden golem, Lent, could only tilt its head in silent confusion. They soon reached the shore of a vast, pristine lake, the perfect spot for a soak. Using his divine tool, Hashira began crafting a makeshift tub. He designed it to be massive, wanting enough room to fully stretch out and relax. He stepped back to admire his work, satisfied that the size was just right. He then tasked the ever-reliable Lent with filling the basin with water. Meanwhile, he decided to challenge himself by starting a fire the old-fashioned way. He was determined to master the art of self-sufficiency in this unforgiving new world. Gritting his teeth, he focused every ounce of his energy on the task at hand. He leaned into the fire drill, putting his entire body weight into the friction. The moment he spotted a wisp of smoke, he began to spin the wood even faster. Tension filled the air as he worked tirelessly under the open sky. With one final push, the kindling caught, blossoming into a small, crackling flame. "I did it!" he cheered, overwhelmed by a genuine sense of accomplishment. He proudly boasted to Lent, asking if the golem was impressed by his survival skills. Next, he carefully placed several large stones into the growing fire to heat them up. Once the stones glowed a brilliant cherry red, they were finally ready. He carefully plunged the first sizzling stone into the tub of cool water. He knew he'd have to repeat this process several times to reach the perfect temperature. After placing a wooden grate at the bottom for comfort, the project was finally finished. "The bath is complete!" he announced with a triumphant flourish. With joyous abandon, he tossed his clothes aside, eager to jump in. He carefully tested the water, finding it perfectly, wonderfully hot. Sinking into the steaming tub, he let out a deep sigh of utter relief. "Man," he murmured, his face a mask of pure bliss. "This feels incredible." He splashed the warm, clean water on his face, feeling the day's grime wash away. He mused that the saying, "A bath is the laundry of life," was absolutely true. The two companions enjoyed their soak on the shore, dwarfed by the grand landscape. The magnificent open scenery made it feel like a luxurious outdoor hot spring. He resolved to do this every day to stay clean and wash away his fatigue. He then noticed his silent companion, Lent, staring intently at him from the shore. "Could it be," he wondered aloud, "that you want to get into?" He happily offered to switch places, promising to wash Lent down first. He splashed water over the golem's sturdy wooden body. He explained that it was proper manners to rinse off before entering the tub. Lent climbed in, displacing a massive wave of water with his sheer bulk. Water cascaded over the sides of the tub as the golem settled in. "How's your first bath?" Hazura asked as Lent gave a satisfied thumbs up. He smiled, relieved that his strange and wonderful companion was enjoying the soak. As he hung his laundry to dry, he made a mental note to try the waterfall tomorrow. The rhythmic sound of waves lapping at the shore filled the tranquil evening air. "Hey, Lent!" Hazura called out. "It's time to head back." But the golem remained frozen, staring intently at something further down the beach. Hazura followed its gaze, his eyes widening in pure shock. Lying unconscious on the sand was a young woman with flowing blonde hair. Rushing to her side, he noticed her long, pointed ears. She was an elf. He suddenly remembered the god mentioning that other races inhabited this world. He leaned in closer, his surprise quickly shifting to deep concern for her well-being. That's when he saw it. A grievous, dark wound bleeding from her side. "She's injured," he realized, a jolt of alarm surging through him. He gently supported her, confirming she was unresponsive and deathly cold. The basic medicine he carried wouldn't cut it. He needed the potent herbs back home. Her breathing was shallow, her life slowly fading away on the cold, damp sand. She grimaced in pain as her consciousness slipped further into the abyss. "Lent," he commanded. "Carry her carefully. She's badly hurt." He knew this was the moment to put his transportation experiment to the ultimate test. "Grab the vines in the back," he instructed Lent, taking his position at the front. He gripped his divine tool, his knuckles turning white with resolve. "All right," he thought, steeling himself for the desperate journey ahead. "We're flying!" he yelled as the log shot across the landscape at incredible speed. In a flashback, we see the elf running for her life through the forest, gasping for air. She thought she had escaped her pursuer, but her injuries were grave. She clutched the jagged wound inflicted by a monstrous armored bear. She stumbled, knowing she had to stop the bleeding or she would die right there. Dark droplets of her blood splattered onto the ground near her boots. "I can't die like this," she thought, her strength finally giving out. She collapsed onto the forest floor, the world around her fading to black. Her last conscious thought was a faint, desperate whisper for salvation. "Someone, please help me." She jolted awake with a sudden, violent gasp, her eyes snapping open. Disoriented and confused, she wondered what had happened to her. To her horror, she realized her clothes were gone, replaced by only a simple towel. "Are you awake now?" a young man's voice asked from across the room. He smiled kindly, holding a knife and a poultice, relieved to see her conscious. Seeing the blade, terror seized her, and she lunged at him with a desperate cry. She tackled him to the floor, demanding to know who he was and what he wanted. Before he could even speak, thick vines erupted from the floor in a shocking display of power. The flora coiled around her instantly, squeezing the breath from her lungs in a sharp gasp. Hashira remained on the floor, stunned by the sudden and violent escalation. The massive vines hoisted her effortlessly, dragging her away from the young man. "Thanks, Lent," he muttered, before pleading with the elf to just calm down and listen. She lashed out, accusing him of threatening her with a blade while she was vulnerable. He offered a quick apology, realizing his knife had caused a disastrous misunderstanding. He swore he meant no harm, but she remained guarded, her eyes full of suspicion. He explained that he'd discovered her by the river, drenched, freezing, and on the brink of death. Her memories slowly returned, recalling the brutal ambush in the great forest of death. Reaching for her side, she was shocked to realize the agonizing pain had completely vanished. He then clarified that it was Lent, not himself, who had actually changed her wet clothes. "Lent, please release her," Hashira commanded his silent wooden guardian. The thick vines obeyed instantly, retracting back beneath the floorboards. The elf stood up cautiously, clutching her towel tightly to maintain her dignity. Hashira looked away, flustered, trying his best to give her a moment of privacy. Her eyes widened in sheer disbelief as she inspected her own body. That fatal wound from the armored bear had been completely wiped away. She was left speechless, unable to process the impossibility of her own survival. Hashira turned to his guest with a warm smile, asking if she was finally feeling better. The scene shifts to a rustic, magically constructed home nestled under a heavy, overcast sky. Lydia clutches a small medicine jar, realizing this humble ointment was the very thing that saved her. To her, the treatment is bizarre. Medicine is typically ingested, not applied topically like this. Hashira offers a sheepish smile, finding it difficult to explain the nature of his unique abilities. Lydia's curious gaze soon falls upon an ornate knife resting by the hearth. She points to a nearby stone cup, skeptically asking if he truly carved it using that tool. To prove it, he effortlessly shaves away a layer of solid stone using the seemingly wooden blade. Lydia is left utterly speechless, unable to fathom how a wooden knife could slice through rock like butter. She stares in stunned silence, her mind struggling to process the impossible feat she just witnessed. Noticing her intense reaction, Hashira looks at her with a hint of genuine concern. Overcome with shame, Lydia bows deeply, apologizing profusely for attacking the man who saved her life. Hashira waves his hands frantically, urging her to raise her head from the floor. He reassures her that since they both walked away unscathed, there's no reason to worry. He formally introduces himself as Hashira, asking her to simply address him by his name. Returning the smile, she introduces herself as Lydia and offers him her best regards. She then clarifies her lineage, explaining that she isn't just a common elf, but a high elf. High elves, she notes, are legendary for their immense magical power and incredible longevity. Despite her status, she humbly admits she was no match for the forest's most ferocious monsters. Hashira looks completely perplexed, a literal question mark practically popping over his head. He asks for clarification, wondering if the Great Forest of Death she mentioned is actually this very place. Lydia cheerfully confirmed it, gesturing toward a vast area on an imaginary map. She asked in disbelief how he could have lived here without even knowing where he was. Hashira turned the tables, questioning why a high elf would ever venture to such a remote place. Blushing, she claimed she only wanted to witness the world's abundant natural beauty. Finally, she blurted out the truth. She was simply bored after living for so many centuries. Hashira's mind reeled as he tried to comprehend the staggering scale of her age. He quickly changed the subject, asking her about a legendary creature called a Gayanort. Lydia tilted her head, searching her memories to recall what kind of monster that actually was. Suddenly, she pointed right past him, claiming there was one standing directly by his side. Confused, Hashira turned around to see exactly what she was pointing at. All he saw was his silent, leafy companion, Lent, sitting there stoically. He asked if she meant Lent, trying to confirm if his friend was actually a Gayanort. He insisted Lent was just a simple wooden golem, but Lydia vehemently disagreed. A Gayanort, she explained, was a powerful spirit tasked with guarding nature itself. Hashira patted Lent, newly amazed by how incredible his companion truly was. Lydia mused that with the Gayanort around, surviving in this forest might not be so difficult. She then held up a green deer pelt, identifying it as a highly dangerous monster. Hashira was shocked to realize he had hunted such a formidable beast without even knowing it. The two sat by the fire, reflecting on the unexpected dangers lurking in their new home. However, Hashira noted that Lydia still hadn't fully recovered from her previous injuries. He extended a kind invitation, offering her a place to stay until she fully recovered. Lydia's expression radiated pure joy as she gratefully accepted his hospitality. However, she revealed that she had a specific request of her own to make. With him by her side, she finally felt confident enough to explore the depths of the forest. Hashira hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks of her adventurous proposal. Misreading his silence, she puffed out her chest, determined to prove her usefulness. He quickly clarified that he was actually just wondering if she could help him smoke some meat. Lydia stood there, momentarily stunned by such a surprisingly mundane request. She eagerly agreed, and he began showing her around his humble abode. A caption confirms the new dynamic. A high elf has officially moved in. The following morning arrived with a breathtaking view of the mist-shrouded peaks. Hashira spent the early hours in a clearing, practicing with a bow he'd crafted himself. His first shot found its mark, signaling a promising start to the day. The camera zooms in to show his arrow embedded firmly in the outer ring. Lent, watching from the sidelines, offered a sparkling and enthusiastic thumbs up. Hashira chuckled, admitting that the simple act of practicing was reward enough. Lydia eventually emerged from the house, greeting the pair with a radiant smile. She gushed about her night, noting the leaf bed was fluffy and the deer pelt was incredibly warm. She admitted it had been an eternity since she'd spoken to anyone other than the gods. Spotting the archery range, she couldn't help but comment on its peculiar location. Her attention then shifted to the house as she marveled at its unique architectural design. Impressed by its sturdy build, she asked if he was a master architect by trade. He shook his head, explaining that he had constructed it using his unique ability. Lydia tilted her head, her expression a mix of curiosity and utter confusion. To demonstrate, he channeled his power, forcing a nearby tree to twist and grow at his command. He revealed he could manipulate plant life anywhere, leaving Lydia completely speechless. Noticing her stunned silence, Hashira brought his demonstration to a halt. When he asked if she was all right, she could only stammer, struggling to find her voice. She whispered that he possessed the power of Gaia, commanding nature itself. With eyes full of reverence, she asked if he was actually a great spirit. He insisted he was just a normal human, but she explained that elves hold spirits in the highest regard. He pleaded with her to just treat him like a regular person, and she reluctantly gave in. As he moved to show her the fields, she stopped him for a moment. Now that she was feeling better, she asked if she could practice her own combat skills. He agreed with a smile, noting that such a request made perfect sense for an elf. He complimented her, saying that archery was a perfect fit for her graceful image. Blushing slightly, she playfully asked exactly what he meant by that. She formally requested to borrow his bow, and he was more than happy to oblige. He handed over the simple weapon, admitting it was just the work of an amateur. He presented the handcrafted longbow to her with a humble shrug. She thanked him, admiring the bow's rugged yet elegant craftsmanship. When he asked if she had been defenseless, she quickly set the record straight. She revealed that her own bow had been shattered by that terrifying armored bear. Hashira's expression darkened as he realized just how much danger she was really in. Lydia took her stance, her aura instantly shifting into that of a legendary marksman. She loosed an arrow that tore through the air with blinding speed and raw power. Her gaze was cold and sharp, filled with absolute deadly focus. Her shot struck his previous arrow, splitting the shaft perfectly down the center. From their vantage point on the hill, the precision of the shot was undeniable. She let out a small smirk, casually mentioning that she felt a bit out of practice. To prove it, she fired a second shot with even more devastating force. The arrow didn't just hit the bullseye, it vaporized it in a spray of splinters. Stunned by her god-tier skill, Hashira couldn't help but shower her with praise. Ever modest, she claimed that such a shot was basic for any elf. As he watched her, a sudden inspiration struck Hashira. Knowing his own aim was pathetic, he asked if she'd be willing to train him. He took a deep, steadying breath and tried his best to mimic her perfect form. Instead, his arrow sailed wide, thudding uselessly into the dirt. He slumped in defeat as Lydia realized his technique was even worse than she feared. Taking pity on him, she began the lesson, starting with the very basics, the stance. She steps in to adjust Hashira's form, demanding he straighten his posture. Next, she offers precise advice on the proper way to position his elbow. He cautiously asks if his current stance is finally up to her standards. She quickly corrects him, noting that he's overextending his arm. Guiding his arm manually, she reminds him to keep the arrow perfectly level. Hashira becomes visibly flustered by her proximity and the sweet fragrance of her hair. He internally berates himself, desperately trying to focus back on the lesson. She gives the command to release, emphasizing he must maintain that perfect form. With eyes locked onto the target, Hashira prepares to let the arrow fly. The projectile soars through the air in a flawless, straight trajectory. It strikes the wooden target with a satisfying thud, a dead-center bullseye. Hashira can only stare in wide-eyed disbelief at his own sudden success. He exclaims that he's never felt better, while Lydia offers him some rare encouragement. He thanks her profusely, eager to replicate the feat all on his own. Unfortunately, his next attempt is a disaster, with the arrow sailing wide of the mark. He laments his inconsistency as Lydia immediately points out his technical flaw. A small doodle appears, conveying his internal realization that this is incredibly difficult. Suddenly, a simple stick whistles through the air, hitting the dead center of the target. They turn in shock to find the silent golem, Lent, standing nearby. Lent gives a triumphant thumbs up, silently declaring himself the victor. Lydia giggles, teasingly suggesting that Lent might actually be a better archer than Hashira. The camera pans across the lush, dew-covered greenery of the forest. With their work finally finished, Hashira suggests it's time for a well-earned breakfast. He presents a basket overflowing with vegetables and asks Lydia if she's ever tried them. Curious, she holds up a strange round fruit and asks what it could be. He explains it's a chewy fruit, a staple food for the people in this region. Right on cue, Lydia's stomach lets out a comically loud and embarrassing growl. Hashira lets out a laugh, telling her he can explain the rest while they eat. He instructs her to peel back the skin and enjoy the soft white pulp inside. Intrigued, Lydia takes a large, adventurous bite of the soft fruit. Her eyes instantly light up as she realizes the texture is wonderfully chewy and sweet. She happily munches away, admitting she prefers this over any bread she's bought in the city. Hashira beams, glad she's enjoying the meal, and offers her a second helping. The scene then focuses on bowls filled with vibrant, freshly picked wild greens. He remembers that she's tried this specific type of vegetable once before. He asks her to give it a taste to see how much the quality has improved since then. Lydia eagerly accepts the challenge, telling him to leave the taste testing to her. But the moment she takes a bite, her face is overcome with pure shock. She exclaims that this version is exponentially more delicious than the wild variety. Now, she's left wondering if it's his incredible farming skills or just the richness of the soil. He humbly attributes their good fortune to the divine blessing of the goddess, Elfra. Lydia, still hungry, asks if she can have another serving of the chewy fruit. He offers to grill the next one for her, a proposal she eagerly accepts. He reminds her that she needs to eat well to recover from her recent blood loss. He encourages her to fuel up in preparation for their upcoming afternoon expedition. Lydia is visibly brimming with excitement at the thought of seeing the giant trees. She feels safe exploring, knowing Hashira and Lint are there to protect her. For her own peace of mind, she asks to borrow a bow for self-defense during the trek. He agrees, but warns her not to overexert herself, causing her to blush at his concern. As she continues to eat, he correctly guesses her plan to hunt some small game. The scene transitions across a vast field of swaying grass under a crystal-clear sky. Hashira asks if she's ready to depart, and she confirms she's feeling excellent. With a final word of encouragement, the trio ventures deep into the ancient forest. They soon find themselves gazing up at a colossal tree bathed in golden sunlight. Lydia stands in awe, marveling at the sheer, overwhelming scale of the forest. Hashira asks if she enjoys being in nature, and she enthusiastically confirms she does. She explains that elves possess an instinctive sense of peace when in the wild. He inquires if her former home was also a place of such abundant natural beauty. She admits it was a vast forest, but it lacked this incredible, grand scale. She explains that she grew bored of her stagnant life and set out to see the world. She turns the conversation around, asking about the world he left behind. Hashira hesitates, struggling to find the right words to describe his former life. A quick flashback reveals a modern city, crowded, frantic, and suffocatingly stressful. A simple photo of pancakes serves as a bittersweet reminder of his old world. Lydia describes it as a hellish landscape, and Hashira can't help but somberly agree. Still, he smiles, noting that his family made all that hardship worth enduring. Stunned by the weight of his words, Lydia covers her mouth in genuine shock. She quickly apologizes for prying into what must be a deeply painful memory. Realizing he may have sounded a bit too grim, Hashira tries to clear the air. He casually clarifies that since he's the one who died, she really shouldn't worry. To lighten the mood, he pivots and asks what life is like for the elves. She explains that their homes are unique, often carved directly into hollowed-out trees. Curious, he asks about their diet, assuming they aren't much for eating meat. Lydia prepares to give him a first-hand demonstration of exactly what they eat. Suddenly, her keen elven eyes lock onto a rabbit in the far distance. The view shifts to a small white rabbit twitching its nose in a distant clearing. Even from this incredible range, she's already tracked her target. Hashira is floored by her superhuman vision as she asks for permission to take the shot. He happily gives her the green light, eager to add some fresh meat to their dinner table. With the fluid grace of a master archer, she knocks an arrow in one seamless motion. With lethal precision, she draws her bowstring to its absolute limit. With a resonant twang, the arrow is unleashed with incredible force. It streaks through the woods, nothing more than a blur as it closes in on its target. The shot is true, striking the rabbit and taking it down in an instant. Hashira commends her mastery, earning a shy word of thanks in return. She admits that his particular hunting style would be impossible for her to replicate. He reveals his secret. He simply uses his wood manipulation to restrain his prey. Spotting a bird perched nearby, he prepares to give her a live demonstration. A branch suddenly twists and surges, weaving a living cage around the creature. Proud of his handiwork, he presents the catch and declares the hunt a success. Lydia stands frozen, rendered speechless by such an effortless display of magic. It's clear to her now, in this forest, Hashira reigns supreme. Suddenly, a sweet, exotic fragrance catches on the breeze and drifts their way. Lydia closes her eyes, savoring the intoxicating and wonderful aroma. They imagine finding rare flowers that could yield the perfect honey for their fruit. Lydia focuses her senses, desperately trying to track the scent to its source. A bright smile breaks across her face as she finally pinpoints its location. She eagerly pushes through a dense thicket, desperate to see what lies beyond. They both gasp in unison, their expressions freezing in absolute shock. Before them in the clearing sits a monstrous, gargantuan plant. A status window reveals the creature to be a lethal, man-eating, carnivorous plant. Hashira just smiles, unfazed because, at the end of the day, it's still just a plant. Lydia descends into the panic, screaming for him to flee before the monster tears them apart. To Lydia's absolute horror, he calmly pats the beast and tells her everything will be fine. The plant's petals peel back, exposing a gruesome maw lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth. In a lethal blur of motion, thorny vines lash out toward the pair. Hashira shoves Lydia to safety just as the deadly vines strike the ground. He raises his hand, his expression hardening as he stares down the monster's assault. Gripping his divine staff, he commands the frozen vines to halt in their tracks. Lydia stands speechless, stunned that he can actually bend such a powerful monster to his will. With a confident smirk, Hashira confirms that he is indeed in complete control. The plant's toothy maw trembles, visibly confused by its sudden loss of autonomy. He acknowledges its vicious nature, but a brilliant new idea is already taking shape. He asks Lydia if planting this beast near their fields might be a good idea. Lydia is left aghast as he offers a man-eating monster a permanent place to live. He promises to nourish the creature if it agrees to serve as their farm's guardian. The massive entity begins to magically fold and twist in on itself. It shrinks down into a small, smooth pod that falls gently to the forest floor. Hashira picks up the pod, contemplating exactly where to plant it once they get home. The group decides to head back, making sure to retrieve their hard-earned hunt on the way. We return to their tranquil homestead, basking under a pristine, clear sky. Hashira stands over the newly planted pod, preparing his growth-accelerating magic. Channeling his divine green energy, he hovers his hands over the soil. In a flash of magical light, a tiny sprout erupts from the earth. The pod shimmers and expands, morphing into a surprising new form. A tiny, adorable flower creature with a grumpy little face emerges from its nest. Lydia is instantly charmed, softly asking if the little one remembers them. The plant creature responds with a slow, deliberate nod of recognition. Hashira formally introduces himself and his companion, the high elf, Lydia. He then gestures to the towering golem standing guard, introducing him as Lent. He explains the deal. The plant will serve as a guardian, protecting their fields from pests. The creature beams with a toothy grin, nodding enthusiastically in agreement. One of its vines reaches out toward Hashira, offering him a mysterious gift. It drops a peculiar, insect-shaped seed directly into his palm. An on-screen prompt identifies it as a specialized seed designed for pest control. Hashira is impressed, knowing this will be an invaluable asset to the farm. The little creature then playfully taps the simple bracelet on Lydia's wrist. Lydia gushes over how precious it is, finding it hard to believe it's actually a lethal plant. Suddenly, a fly buzzes past Lydia's head, catching her off guard. With lightning-fast reflexes, the plant's stalk whips out and snatches the fly midair. Hashira shares a laugh while a relieved Lydia pets their helpful new companion. Later that night, the house sits peacefully under a shimmering blanket of stars. Standing on the porch under a crescent moon, Lydia calls out to Hashira. He asks what's on her mind, informing her that the rabbit meat is nearly finished. A chibi version of Lydia begins drooling, imagining just how delicious the meal will be. She then presents a handful of shimmering crystals and magic stones. She explains that she harvested these from monsters, hoping to trade them for cash. These stones, she notes, are essential materials for crafting weapons and magical tools. She then asks Hashira if he can sense the raw magical power radiating from them. Hashira cheerfully admits that he has absolutely no talent for using magic. Lydia finally has an epiphany, realizing why he struggled so much just to light a fire. Despite his incredible physical feats, he wonders if he possesses any magical aptitude at all. Lydia offers to test his potential, confident that everyone can learn the basics. She gently takes his hand and closes her eyes, concentrating deeply on his mana. Her diagnosis reveals a high aptitude for earth, but a complete lack of affinity for fire. Hashira grumbles about his luck, annoyed that fire is his weakest element. As they sit over a simple bowl of soup, the conversation turns back to training. He asks her for advice on how he should begin his magical practice. Lydia explains that mana circulates through the body in the same way as blood. She prepares to demonstrate, telling him to focus on the feeling of her magic activating. Hashira eagerly agrees, practically begging her to show him the ropes. He also makes a mental note to stay consistent with his archery training. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the demon kingdom of Belphegor, deep within the Demon King's castle. A jagged Gothic spire looms against the backdrop of a foreboding night sky. Inside the imposing fortress, a desperate voice cries out for the princess. A frantic maid scours the halls, wondering where her lady has vanished to. The demon princess, Carmilla, remains hidden, clearly annoyed by her persistent maid, Cray. Cray continues her frantic search, shouting for the missing royal. Carmilla realizes it's only a matter of time before she's spotted if she stays inside. She decides her best bet is to make a break for it and flee the castle grounds. But as she rounds the corner, she's immediately intercepted by another maid. The maid bellows out that she's finally cornered the runaway princess. Realizing the jig is up, Carmilla playfully sticks her tongue out at her pursuer. She takes to the skies, spreading her wings as the maid screams for her to stop. Armored dragon-like guards are immediately ordered to intercept the fleeing princess. The guards charge forward, spears leveled and ready to bring her down. Carmilla just smirks with total confidence as a surge of immense power swirls around her. With a casual flick of her wrist, she prepares to unleash a devastating spell. A surge of dark energy erupts from her palm in a violent, concentrated wave. The guards are effortlessly swept aside by the sheer force of her overwhelming magic. The maid observes that ordinary soldiers stand no chance against the princess's overwhelming power. Floating amidst the moonlight, Carmilla contemplates her next move. She decides the great forest of death will provide some much-needed amusement. Her maid cries out in a panic, desperate to know where her mistress is heading. Carmilla simply laughs it off, soaring away with a playful promise to visit the woods. We return to the quiet clearing where Hashira has established his homestead. Resting on the porch, he focuses on the fundamentals, mana manipulation. Following Lydia's guidance, he attempts to concentrate the energy at his fingertip. Lydia explains that the next step is circulating that sensation throughout his entire body. The true objective, she tells him, is to achieve total and fluid mastery over his energy. A brief transition marks the passage of time as his training continues. Hashira struggles, realizing that theory is far easier than practice. Finally, a faint ember of magical light flickers to life at his command. He's satisfied, considering it a solid achievement for a former office worker. Days later, Lent returns, hauling the massive carcass of a tusk boar. Lydia notes that even for someone like Lent, taking down a devil fang is no small feat. Hashira expresses his gratitude and asks him to handle the butchering as usual. Lydia then presents Hashira with a pouch overflowing with harvested magic stones. He's thrilled, knowing these high-quality gems will fetch a handsome price at market. But as he reaches for the pouch, a sudden moment of clumsiness causes his grip to falter. A handful of shimmering magic stones tumble through the air, heading straight for the garden. One of the precious gems lands perfectly on the tilled soil right next to a plant. Lydia gasps, covering her mouth in total disbelief at what she's seeing. Instead of bouncing, the stone dissolves into the earth like liquid with a distinct splash. Hashira stands frozen, his face a mask of pure confusion at this impossible sight. He drops to his knees, shouting that the ground literally just swallowed the magic stone. He stares at the spot, his mind racing to process the bizarre phenomenon. Suddenly, the nearby vegetable plant surges with life, its flowers blooming in the blink of an eye. Pointing a shaky finger, Hashira asks Lydia if the crops really just grew right before their eyes. He leans in close to inspect the soil surrounding the miraculously flourishing greenery. He takes a pinch of dirt, noticing it isn't drained of life like when he uses his own magic. He realizes the stone's raw mana is converting directly into hyper-rich nutrients for the earth. Lydia nods in shock, realizing these stones are actually the world's most potent fertilizer. When Hashira asks if this is normal, Lydia explains this only happens in his unique fields. A new plan takes shape. He'll trade the high-grade stones and use the rest for farming. But his scheming is interrupted by a gentle tug on his sleeve from little Kichon. He asks if the little spirit wants a stone, and it nods with adorable, wide-eyed eagerness. Lydia smiles, figuring the mana-rich stone must be a gourmet treat for their small guardian. Hashira realizes he can keep the soil legendary by using these stones after every harvest. He reflects on this game-changing discovery, finding a whole new purpose for his dungeon loot. Unbeknownst to them, a winged figure with crimson hair watches from a high vantage point. The young girl calls out to them, her voice booming with an air of absolute authority. She descends from the heavens, a brilliant radiance emanating from her small frame. Landing gracefully, she demands to know what business they have in this place. Hashira is taken aback, baffled as to why a literal child is floating in midair. Lydia's eyes widen in terror as she instantly senses the girl's true nature. She's a demon. She warns that this is no ordinary monster, but a high-ranking entity of immense status. Lydia trembles, realizing this little girl's raw power far exceeds her own. Growing impatient, the demon princess snaps, asking if they failed to hear her question. Hashira remains composed, explaining that they are simply tending to the fields of their home. He politely introduces himself as Hashira and asks for her name in return. Following his lead, the high elf cautiously introduces herself as Lydia. The princess finds it hilarious that a human and a high elf are actually living together. Striking a theatrical pose, she declares herself Carmilla, daughter of the Demon King. This bombshell revelation leaves both Hashira and Lydia completely paralyzed with shock. Lydia whispers that, given her overwhelming aura, the girl likely isn't lying. Carmilla scans their homestead, her expression shifting from boredom to genuine curiosity. She's genuinely impressed that they've managed to build a proper home in such a wasteland. She finds it fascinating that they're actually attempting to tame the great forest of death. Hashira offers her a taste of their prize crops, an invitation she eagerly accepts. He notes that despite her imposing title, she comes across as nothing more than an innocent child. He guides her toward a grove of trees laden with strange, bud-like mochi fruit. Explaining that this is their staple food, he asks the princess if she's ever sampled it before. With a deft twist, he plucks a ripe piece of fruit directly from the branch. He peels back the leafy outer layer, revealing the impossibly soft pulp hidden within. He offers the treat to the curious princess, encouraging her to take a bite. Carmilla is instantly taken aback by the fruit's incredibly soft and yielding texture. She marvels at its squishy consistency, playfully bouncing it in her palms. With her curiosity piqued, she prepares to take her very first taste. She sinks her teeth into the dough-like fruit with an eager, enthusiastic chomp. Her eyes widen in pure ecstasy as the rich, delicious flavor explodes across her palate. She immediately demands to know if they have any other delicacies hidden away. Hashira suggests some wild vegetables, but Carmilla scoffs, declaring her utter hatred for greens. He realizes that her picky eating habits are just like those of any other spoiled child. His gaze then drifts toward a small orchard of apple-like gravalingo trees nearby. Carmilla's eyes sparkle, declaring that she prefers fruit over disgusting vegetables any day. Lydia tries to intervene, pointing out that the fruit isn't quite ripe yet. Hashira calmly reassures Lydia, deciding it's best to indulge their royal guest's whims. He explains to Carmilla that the gravalingos aren't exactly ready for harvest. Carmilla imperiously dismisses his concerns, stating she's simply in the mood for fruit. Resigning himself to the situation, Hashira sighs and agrees to pick a fruit for her. He hands the freshly harvested grave ringo to the eagerly waiting demon princess. Without a second thought, she takes a massive, crunchy bite out of the apple-like fruit. An explosion of flavor immediately stuns her into a momentary silence. "What is this?" she shouts, exclaiming that it's far too delicious to be real. Hashira then offers a slice to Lydia, inviting her to taste the harvest as well. While they agree it's not yet fully ripe, Lydia notes it will only taste better with time. Carmilla is aghast that they would consider such an exquisite flavor as being merely so-so. Hashira smiles, genuinely touched to hear such high praise for something he grew himself. A faint blush of pride and satisfaction creeps onto his cheeks. He realizes that sharing this joy with others is far more rewarding than enjoying it alone. Carmilla gazes down at the fruit, a new, calculating glint appearing in her eyes. A wicked, fanged grin spreads across her face as a devious plan begins to take shape. Looking up at the sky, she grandly announces that her decision has finally been made. Striking a dramatic pose, she declares that from this moment on, this land belongs to her. Hashira and Lydia are left utterly speechless, struggling to process what they just heard. The chapter title card appears, featuring a smug Carmilla, the Demon King's mischievous daughter. Lydia asks for clarification, while Hashira's expression begins to harden with concern. Carmilla repeats her demand, mockingly asking if they went deaf the first time she said it. Hashira demands she clarify exactly what she means by such a bold and sudden declaration. She boldly declares that these fields now belong to her, and they are now her subjects. Hashira points out that she hasn't even mentioned a fair price for the land. Carmilla scoffs, claiming it's a high honor to serve the daughter of the Demon King. Lydia stamps her foot in rage, ready to protest this absurd, one-sided demand. She whirls around to face Carmilla, demanding the princess wait just a second. She argues that even if the land is unclaimed, she can't just seize it by force. Hashira watches as Lydia delivers a fierce, impassioned defense of their new home. Carmilla's face darkens, clearly annoyed at being lectured by a lowly elf. Hashira admits he doesn't care for complex political arguments over territory. Carmilla's eyes narrow into dangerous slits as she repeats herself. She wants it. She releases a surge of oppressive mana, sending the group stumbling backward. Hashira grits his teeth against the piercing, immense magical pressure she emits. He finally realizes the terrifying scale of power the Demon King's daughter possesses. Despite the crushing weight, he clenches his fist, refusing to let her break him. He looks her in the eye, his voice ringing with defiance as he gives her a flat no. He declares that these fields are the fruit of their grueling, daily labor. He roars that he will never bow to such a selfish and tyrannical demand. Carmilla's fanged smile returns, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "Is that so?" she asks, her patience finally spent as her magic begins to boil over. Having reached her limit, Carmilla fires a blast, determined to beat them into submission. A torrent of magical fire rains down from the heavens, drenching the fields in flame. The blaze erupts, engulfing their precious mochi-mochi trees in a violent violet inferno. Hashira and Lydia stand paralyzed, watching in horror as their hard work turns to cinders. Lydia screams in disbelief, demanding to know how Carmilla could commit such an atrocity. Hashira lunges forward, desperately trying to smother the magical flames. He curses in frustration, his branch proving useless against the unnatural, searing heat. The wood does nothing to quell the power of this otherworldly blaze. Their grove is utterly consumed, reducing the trees and their fruit to nothing but ash. Desperate, Hashira turns to Lydia, begging her to use her magic to douse the fire. From above, Carmilla watches the chaos, casually calling out to mock them. Hashira snarls that the very fields she coveted are now worthless. She callously dismisses his rage, claiming they can simply grow more whenever they please. Her blatant disregard for their struggle ignites a cold, lethal fury within Hashira. He glares up at the floating princess, his patience finally snapping like a brittle twig. Carmilla merely smirks, sensing his bloodlust and taunting him to make a move. Without a word, Hashira thrusts his hand forward, unleashing his own hidden power. The wooden planks of his own home tear away, flying toward her like a storm of spears. The princess is caught off guard by the sheer, overwhelming intensity of the strike. She's forced to twist and dodge through a relentless barrage of wooden projectiles. Hashira roars in fury, asking if she truly thinks there's any escape from his wrath. She suddenly realizes that he's bending the surrounding plant life to his will. Gritting her teeth, she struggles to repel the unrelenting assault. She retaliates with a barrage of devastating explosive magic. 6 glowing circles erupt, firing energy beams that shatter the wooden spears. She scoffs, certain that her arcane power far outclasses his nature manipulation. Hashira warns her that within this forest, there is nowhere left to hide. Suddenly, the wooden spears morph into flexible, whip-like vines. Carmilla gasps in shock as the vines lash out to ensnare her. They coil around her limbs, binding her tighter with every struggle. A magic circle flares as she desperately tries to shatter her restraints, but her magic flickers out, and the vines tighten their grip, completely immobilizing her. Horror dawns on her as she realizes her magical power is being siphoned away. The vines pulse with light, draining the mana directly from her body. She screams in agony as her very life force is bled dry. She begs him to stop, wailing that her mana is vanishing into nothingness. Hashira coldly declares his intent to drain her until she's nothing but a husk. His eyes burn with an icy, unforgiving rage at her unforgivable crimes. Lydia grabs him from behind, pleading for him to stop before he commits murder. Her desperate cry finally begins to pierce through the fog of his fury. She implores him to let Carmilla go, her voice trembling with urgent desperation. He locks eyes with Lydia, her gentle voice finally piercing through his blinding rage. The constriction of the vines loosens, sending the unconscious princess tumbling to the dirt. Shaken, Hashira offers Lydia a sincere apology, admitting he let his fury cloud his judgment. Lydia immediately rushes to Carmilla's side to check her vitals. It's clear the princess isn't just wounded. She's suffering from a critical mana deficiency. Recalling a mana potion in his possession, Hashira sprints to retrieve the life-saving tonic. He bolts toward the house, desperate to grab the healing item before it's too late. As he leaves, Lydia watches him, softly calling his name to halt him for a moment. He pauses, and she offers her gratitude, thanking him for listening when she pleaded with him to stop. She reassures him that his anger was entirely justified, urging him not to carry the guilt. He turns away, his mind still heavy with conflict as he mutters that it doesn't change what happened. His somber expression deepens as he surveys the devastating wreckage left in the princess's wake. He stares at the charred, skeletal remains of the once vibrant mochi-mochi trees. Seeing the grove in ruins leaves a hollow ache in his chest. Suddenly, a groggy Carmilla stirs, weakly asking if his goal is to seize her father's throne. Utterly exhausted by the drama, Hashira snaps back that he only wants a peaceful life. He makes it crystal clear. He has zero interest in her or the Demon King's crown. Carmilla is stunned. She can't fathom how someone this powerful could be so utterly eccentric. Regardless of his odd motives, she begrudgingly admits that he is the undisputed victor. Shifting her tone entirely, she regally commands him to name his prize. Bashira is baffled, questioning Lydia about what she means by a wish. Carmilla clarifies the demon code. The loser is bound to obey the victor's every command. As the winner, she confirms that Bashira now holds the right to demand anything he desires. He initially brushes it off, but a mischievous, vengeful spark begins to flicker in his mind. His eyes glint with a sinister light as he prepares to make a truly bizarre request. Both Lydia and Carmilla are left reeling, visibly flustered by his sudden, strange demand. Carmilla secretly muses that hearing such a command from a superior man isn't all that bad. He explains that she needs to be disciplined, since she clearly hasn't learned her lesson. She lets out a bewildered squeak, her mind racing as she completely misinterprets his intent. He suddenly flips her over his knee, announcing the arrival of his grandmother's special spanking. She yelps in protest, arguing that having her mana drained was surely punishment enough. He retorts that the mana drain was just self-defense. This, however, is the actual consequence. He then threatens to let Lent, the silent golem, take over the disciplinary duties. Terrified, she tearfully surrenders, begging him to keep the menacing Gaianort far away. The mere mention of the golem is enough to force her into total submission. He playfully flicks her heart-shaped tail, noting how surprisingly soft and smooth it feels. Lydia quickly scolds him, explaining that a demon's tail is an incredibly sensitive spot. He offers a quick apology for his ignorance while a blushing Carmilla squirms in embarrassment. The moment reminds him of how his sister used to lecture him for being so dense. A chibi panel flashes on screen as he steals his heart to finish the punishment. A blank panel marks a transition following that bizarre punishment. Carmilla quietly rises to her feet, her once arrogant demeanor completely shattered. He warns her never to burn the fields again, and she meekly complies, sitting back down. He asks if she has any clue just how many days' worth of food she destroyed. She mutters under her breath that she has no idea how long it takes to grow crops. He smiles, declaring that as the victor, his wish is a simple one. He points directly at her, announcing that she will now be helping with the farm work. She's outraged, demanding to know if he truly expects her to tend to the fields. He states firmly that she must compensate for the absolute mess she made. She protests, questioning why a princess like herself should be forced into manual labor. With a sly grin, he asks if the Demon King's daughter is the type to break her promises. She explodes with indignation, shouting that she never said she wouldn't do it. Pointing at him, she vows to fulfill his wish, leaving him thinking she's surprisingly simple-minded. He tells her it's late and offers her an empty room to stay in for the night. He asks Lydia to show her to the bath, and Lydia happily agrees. That night, the day's bizarre events are reflected upon under the moonlit sky. The next morning, Hashira uses his power to fence off a brand new plot of land. He informs Carmilla that her first task is to clear the land inside the fence. She stares at the hoe and sickle, wondering what these strange tools are even for. Carmilla holds the curved blade, learning that it's a scythe intended for weeding. Now gripping a heavy hoe, she finally understands its purpose in tilling the soil. Carmilla excitedly admits to Hashira that she's never even touched a farming tool before. He explains the basics. To ensure the crops flourish, they must first clear out the weeds and rocks. Hashira offers a small smile, picking up a stray stone to show her exactly what needs to be removed. Crouching low in the grass, Carmilla spots the weeds, a mischievous glint appearing in her eyes. A wicked fanged grin spreads across her face as she suggests just incinerating the whole lot. Hashira's expression instantly shifts into a silent, terrifying glare of pure disapproval. Paralyzed by his dark aura, a terrified Carmilla stammers that she was only joking. He assigns her a specific patch of land to clear, and she eagerly accepts the challenge. Clutching a sickle with newfound determination, she prepares to dive into the hard labor. With one powerful swing, she begins slicing through the thick, overgrown vegetation. A wide, joyful grin breaks out as she realizes that manual labor is actually surprisingly fun. Hashira and Lydia watch from a distance, stunned by her sudden burst of genuine enthusiasm. While Hashira notes her refreshing honesty, Lydia wonders how long her patience will actually last. Suddenly, a thorny vine gently taps Hashira's shoulder to grab his attention. He turns to find Kei-chan looking rather parched and realizes the creature needs a drink. He asks Lydia for an assist, and she happily agrees to provide some hydration. Channeling her mana, Lydia summons a swirling orb of crystalline water between her palms. She splashes the magical liquid over Kei-chan, who shudders in absolute refreshing delight. As they admire the rapid growth of the crops, they credit the magic stones used as high-grade fertilizer. Carmilla grumbles to herself, frustrated that there are still so many weeds left to clear. She whines with envy, complaining that it's not fair for everyone else to have fun without her. Utterly exhausted, she drops her tools, prompting Hashira to ask if she's already throwing in the towel. She groans about her aching back, but he coldly tells her to endure the hardship. The princess puffs out her cheeks, sporting a stubborn and childish pout. Seeing her refuse to budge, Hashira sighs and finally decides to relent. Her mood brightens instantly as she suggests they take a break the moment the weeding is finished. She excitedly asks to play with the plant monster, and Hashira finally gives her the green light. Reinvigorated, she declares she'll work twice as hard just to get the job done. Lydia announces she's heading off to water the other fields, earning a nod of thanks from Hashira. The day drags on beneath a vast and heavy overcast sky. Eventually, the thick weeds are cleared away, leaving nothing but a pile of stones behind. Carmilla stands triumphantly over the barren land, proudly presenting her finished work. Hashira inspects her handiwork and begrudgingly admits she's earned a passing grade. He tells her she's finally free to take a break, and she lets out a joyful victory cheer. She bolts off in high spirits, announcing her plan to go pet the killer plant. Suddenly, a vine whips out and smacks her squarely across the head. The plant pummels her repeatedly as she shrieks in a mix of pain and confusion. She cries out, asking why it's bullying her, but Hashira suggests it's still salty about the fire. Distraught, she wonders how she'll ever manage to make friends with the creature now. He suggests the best way to prove her sincerity is to keep nurturing the fields. Clenching her fists, she vows to push herself even harder with renewed resolve. Even when offered a break, she refuses and insists on diving straight back into the labor. He begins the next lesson, showing her the proper way to use a hoe to till the soil. The heavy tool bites deep into the earth, landing with a heavy, satisfying thud. After watching the demonstration, Carmilla confidently boasts that it looks easy enough. With a determined grunt, she grabs the hoe and readies herself for the task. She swings with chaotic power, violently smashing the tool into the dirt. He warns her not to rely on brute force, but she claims her strength is limitless. Watching her frantic pace, he admits that her confidence is at least consistent. Lydia soon arrives, expressing concern over Carmilla's reckless and messy technique. He simply notes that the princess seems incredibly proud of her physical prowess. Lydia heads off to prep lunch while Carmilla continues her aggressive tilling. Eventually, she pauses to wipe her brow as the intense labor begins to take its toll. Her once powerful swings lose their momentum, barely scraping the surface of the earth. Finally, she grinds to a halt, leaning against the hoe just to catch her breath. Hashira calls out from a distance, mockingly asking where all that earlier energy went. She groans that this is way harder than weeding and complains that her back is killing her. An amused, knowing smirk spreads across his face as he watches her struggle. He demonstrates the correct form, explaining she should use the tool's weight instead of her own. She puts his technique to the test and finds turning the soil to be effortless. Blown away, she praises his skill, realizing she barely needs to use any strength at all. She lets out a triumphant laugh while Hiraku watches her progress with a nod of approval. He's genuinely impressed, remarking that her instincts for farming are top tier. As she keeps at it, he muses that she might be a far better worker than he first anticipated. Suddenly, Lydia's voice drifts over from the distance, announcing that lunch is finally ready. He turns to Carmilla and suggests they take a break, which catches the princess off guard. She looks hesitant for a moment, clearly unsure of how to handle the invitation. Timidly, she asks if it's truly all right for someone like her to eat alongside him. Hiraku turns to her, offering a warm and reassuring smile to ease her nerves. He explains that since she's putting in the work, she's officially part of the team now. Her face instantly lights up with joy as she celebrates her new status as a comrade. With newfound confidence, she proudly declares that she will join them for the meal. Hiraku gives a small, content nod, clearly pleased with her enthusiastic response. Lydia serves a mouth-watering spread of hot soup and toasted matcha mochi fruit. But the princess takes one look at the bowl and immediately starts complaining about the vegetables. Lydia gently encourages her to try it anyway, promising she'll be pleasantly surprised. With a look of pure reluctance, Carmilla stares down the steaming bowl of soup. Her spoon lifts a tempting mix of tender meat and garden-fresh veggies from the broth. She takes her first bite, and her skeptical expression instantly melts into pure shock. Her eyes widen as the unexpected burst of flavor catches her completely off guard. She gasps in disbelief, shocked that the vegetables aren't the least bit bitter. In fact, she declares them far superior to the bland greens served back at the royal castle. Hashira digs into his own plate, savoring the literal fruits of their hard labor. He marvels at the perfect balance between the savory umami of the meat and the natural sweetness of the crops. Watching Carmilla scarf down her food, he jokingly muses that he can't even tell who the royal is anymore. A peaceful silence settles over their quiet, magically constructed homestead. Carmilla offers her thanks to Lydia, who is simply thrilled that she enjoyed the cooking. Sipping his tea, Hashira feels a sense of pride that even a picky eater couldn't resist their harvest. But then Carmilla falls silent, her expression turning somber as she reflects on the meal. She clutches her empty bowl, staring deeply into its polished surface. Noticing the sudden shift in mood, Hashira approaches and asks her what's wrong. Staring at her own reflection, she laments the fact that she once tried to destroy something so wonderful. Stealing her resolve, she stands up and marches toward the others. She drops into a deep bow, offering a sincere apology and vowing to make amends for her past actions. Both Hashira and Lydia look on, stunned by this sudden and genuine display of humility. Their shock soon fades, replaced by warm and accepting smiles. Lydia realizes that, deep down, Carmilla is actually a very honest and earnest person. Hashira tells her he's glad she finally understands, offering her a chance to help them out. To his surprise, Carmilla fiercely shouts, "No!" flatly rejecting his attempt at a compromise. She vows to support them until their mission is finally complete. To do her part, she commits to cultivating an even more bountiful harvest. Declaring it's time to get moving, she prepares for the task ahead. With a look of pure resolve, she ties back her long crimson hair. Meanwhile, Ashura quietly worries about how much her parents will fret. Lydia suddenly realizes their path might lead straight to the Demon King. A heavy silence falls as they both weigh the gravity of the situation. Nearby, a vast and tranquil lake stretches toward the distant horizon. Lydia busies herself washing their clothes with his homemade soap. She notes that any lingering scents can easily be masked with local herbs. With a proud flourish, she holds up a perfectly laundered white shirt. He then asks if she wouldn't mind hanging the laundry out to dry. Lydia happily agrees, her face lighting up with a beaming smile. Ashura calls out to Carmilla, checking in on her fishing progress. Carmilla proudly displays the impressive haul she caught with her bare hands. She brags to Ashura about how effortless the catch actually was. Above the mirror-like water, the sky remains clear and serene. He announces that it's finally time to start prepping their lunch. Eager to help, she takes on the task of gathering supplies from the forest. She beckons for Lent to follow as they head off into the brush. Hashira forages for herbs deep within the dense forest undergrowth. A smile spreads across his face as he finds the exact plant he was looking for. An illustration identifies the fragrant herb as rosemary. He also gathers some emasuba, a plant known for its antibacterial properties. With his fresh ingredients gathered, he prepares to start the culinary process. The bright, cloud-speckled sky signals that early afternoon has arrived. Carmilla wonders if they could save time by just grilling the fish whole. He explains that the fish's tough, armor-like scales must be removed first. He carefully demonstrates the proper way to descale their catch. He recalls learning this specific technique years ago from his grandmother. With a precise, practiced cut, he removes the fish's head. Next, he guts the fish with one clean, expert slice. He warns her to be extremely careful of the incredibly sharp spines. They take the prepared fish to the stream to give them a thorough wash. His knife glides effortlessly along the backbone, separating the meat. She immediately recognizes the familiar shape of the freshly cut fillets. He announces that this prep is done, and it is finally time to add the oil. He seasons the fish with rosemary before wrapping it in large, vibrant leaves. He explains that the leaves are used specifically to steam in the aromatic flavors. Lydia returns from her task, announcing that the clothes are finally dry. He tells them they can dig in as soon as they've changed their clothes. Meanwhile, the leaf-wrapped parcels steam gently over the crackling fire. The trio watches on with watering mouths and eager expressions. Finally, the perfectly steamed fish is ready to be served. Lydia can't help but marvel at how incredible the meal looks. Hashira leads the group as they prepare to give thanks for the feast. Together, they offer their gratitude before finally diving in. Lydia takes a delicate first bite of the succulent, tender fish. She's instantly impressed, praising the fragrant aroma of the rosemary. Carmilla chimes in, shocked by how sweet and incredibly tender the meat is. He gives her credit, praising her for landing such an impressive catch. Above them, the sun gleams brilliantly over the serene expanse of the lake. Carmilla is already eager to head back and check on the progress of the fields. She insists on an inspection despite his playful skepticism. Lydia smiles, noticing just how much Carmilla has grown to love the farm life. He's relieved the fields recovered so well without needing his taxing magic. Suddenly, Hashira's instincts flare as his head snaps toward a sudden sound. A tiny buzzing bee zips dangerously close to Lydia's ear. In a flash, he pulls her back, shielding her from the insect's path. As it flies off, he wonders if that was actually just an ordinary honeybee. A polite voice suddenly rings out, demanding their immediate attention. Bashira asks Lydia if she was the one who spoke, but she's just as confused as he is. The mysterious voice chimes in again, informing him that it's actually hovering right above them. He glances upward and recoils in pure shock at the sight of a colossal bee. Lydia instantly recognizes the creature as the formidable Hell Hornet Queen. The Queen confirms his suspicions, admitting she's been searching for him specifically. She explains the delicate symbiotic bond her hive shared with the killer plant he destroyed. Hashira suddenly realizes the gravity and the unintended consequences of his actions. Guilt washes over him for having inadvertently disrupted their entire ecosystem. Seizing the moment, she formally requests to place her hive under his divine protection. He readily agrees to her terms, prompting the Queen to express her deep gratitude. He enthusiastically invites the entire hive to settle down and live near his domain. The Queen is taken aback by such a direct and incredibly generous offer. In exchange for his protection, he simply asks for a fair share of their honey. She agrees to the deal, provided there are enough flowers nearby to sustain her swarm. He confidently offers to cultivate all the necessary flowers for the hive himself. With a surge of his power, a vibrant new plant instantly blossoms before their eyes. She's immediately mesmerized by the flower's rich and intoxicating aroma. She promises that these special flowers will yield honey of the highest quality imaginable. Satisfied, the Queen agrees to return shortly with the rest of her subjects. The group makes their way back home, spirits high after their journey. Lydia suggests a honey tasting paired with some matcha mochi fruit. An excited Carmilla declares she's going to devour at least 3 of them. Soon, they arrive at their tranquil homestead tucked away in the woods. Suddenly, a mysterious winged figure descends from the clouds above. Carmilla looks up, stunned to hear a familiar voice calling her name. It's her maid, Cray, who has finally tracked down her lost princess. Assuming the princess is in peril, Cray immediately launches an attack. However, Kichan's thorny vines intercept and quickly ensnare the maid. Carmilla frantically confirms that the attacker is her loyal caretaker, Cray. Cray struggles against the tightening vines, desperate to reach her mistress. She furiously warns the group not to even think about touching the princess. In response, the powerful vines violently slam her into the dirt. The trio can't help but wince at the brutal, albeit well-intentioned, defense. Cray cries out in agony as the plants continue their relentless assault. She desperately begs for the crushing vines to finally let her go. Horrified, Carmilla pleads with the MC to call off Kichan's attack. The plant guardian reluctantly yields, releasing its painful grip on her. Carmilla rushes to her fallen maid's side, her face full of concern. Utterly drained, Cray wheezes that she truly thought her life was over. Carmilla pulls the girl into a comforting embrace, assuring her that she's finally safe. Overwhelmed by this display of kindness, Cray's eyes well up with tears of gratitude. Hashira and Lydia watch the emotional reunion from the sidelines with a hint of awkward sympathy. Above the homestead, the clear sky signals a rare moment of tranquility. Once things settle, Hashira asks if she's calmed down, prompting Cray to apologize for her outburst. She formally introduces herself as Kriya Vermilion, a demon serving under Lady Carmilla. With a warm smile, Hashira introduces himself and offers her a sincere welcome. He then gestures toward Lydia, introducing the high elf to their newest guest. When asked if she came specifically for Carmilla, Cray confirms her mission. She explains that this is the longest the princess has ever been away from home. Having regained her composure, she professionally informs the princess that it's time to depart. However, Carmilla's expression hardens as she shouts a sharp, defiant refusal. She firmly declares that her responsibilities here are far from finished. A bewildered Cray wonders what possible duties her princess could have in a place like this. Carmilla clenches her fist, admitting that she acted like a fool only a short while ago. She confesses to destroying the fields, never realizing the immense effort required to tend them. Now driven by regret, she vows not to return home until she has successfully raised new crops. Cray is left stunned by her princess's sudden and incredible change of heart. While she understands the sentiment, she worries the Demon King will grow anxious over her absence. Hashira agrees, suggesting they send a formal report to prevent any unnecessary misunderstandings. Carmilla strokes her chin, deep in thought as she formulates a strategy. She decides that Cray must return to the castle alone to deliver their report. Cray shrieks in terror, horrified at the prospect of braving the woods by herself. Noticing her distress, Hashira raises a hand, already having a solution in mind. He proposes that Link serve as both her personal escort and porter. The silent golem offers a confident thumbs up, readily accepting the mission. Cray is overjoyed, exclaiming how safe she'll feel under the protection of a Gaianorth. Hashira smiles, pleased that the matter has been settled so smoothly. He invites her to stay the night, noting that the forest is far too treacherous after dark. Night descends upon the quiet homestead as stars begin to twinkle above. A refreshed Carmilla and Cray emerge from a soothing, relaxing bath. Hashira greets them by the hearth, encouraging Cray to make herself at home. He notes that their timing is impeccable, as the evening meal is finally ready. A magnificent feast is laid out, with every dish detailed in a small note. The group gathers around the fire as Hashira invites everyone to dig in. Lydia presses her hands together, offering a quiet prayer of thanks for the food. Carmilla instructs a surprised Cray to also give thanks before they begin eating. Confused, Cray asks exactly what she's supposed to be saying. The princess explains that it's customary to show gratitude for life's blessings. Hashira clarifies that it's simply a common greeting shared before a meal. With a gentle smile, Cray clasps her hands together and offers a silent prayer of thanks. She decides to try the steak first, slicing into the large, succulent cut of meat. Closing her eyes, she takes her first bite, letting the rich flavors wash over her. Her eyes snap open in astonishment as she exclaims just how incredible it tastes. She begins devouring the meal with gusto, much to Hiraku's surprise. He asks if the seasoning is perhaps too light, but she quickly shakes her head. She raves about the tender, juicy meat and the perfectly balanced, tangy sauce. Hiraku smiles warmly, relieved to see their guest enjoying the feast so much. Lydia explains that the sauce's unique zest comes from the local grayling fruit. She offers some mochi fruit to Cray, who accepts it with a grateful nod. Cray tries the salad next, marveling at the crisp, sweet freshness of the greens. Carmilla proudly boasts that she was the one who watered and harvested those very vegetables. Puffing out her chest, she smugly declares that excellence is only to be expected. She happily munches on a piece of enoko, praising its sweet and crunchy texture. Cray is utterly flabbergasted to see the princess willingly eating her vegetables. She recalls how Carmilla used to refuse them, even when they were finely chopped and hidden. Hiraku explains that while his crops are naturally less bitter, there's a deeper secret at play. Carmilla adds that appreciating the hard labor behind the harvest makes every bite taste better. Cray gazes at her princess, finally recognizing the profound change in her character. The princess's draconic eye glints as she prepares to make her next point. Excitement bubbles over as she tells Cray about the wild strawberries she's currently cultivating. She's practically counting down the days until they ripen so she can finally enjoy a taste. Cray watches her princess with a gentle, proud smile, touched by her newfound passion. She remarks that her lady seems to have changed and matured immensely in such a short time. The scene transitions, marking the passage of time as the sun rises the following morning. Birds chirp atop the tiled roof of the house, signaling the dawn of a brand new day. Cray offers her formal thanks to Hashira for his hospitality, though he humbly brushes it off. But just as she prepares to depart, Hashira suddenly remembers a crucial request. He stops her, asking if she would be willing to do him one small yet vital favor. He explains their desperate need for fresh seeds, seasonings, and other essential supplies. In exchange, he presents a bag filled with magic stones harvested from defeated monsters. Cray carefully inspects a large dark crystal, immediately noting its exceptional quality. She agrees to consult with the Demon King regarding the trade, much to Hashira's relief. Carmilla impatiently urges Cray to hurry back so she doesn't miss the upcoming harvest. Cray reminds her that it's nearly impossible to travel quickly through such a dangerous forest. Hashira then turns to Rent, instructing him to take good care of Cray on their journey. With her powerful guardian by her side, Cray confidently bids the villagers farewell. The remaining trio watches them go, wishing her a safe and swift journey back to the castle. They wave as their emissaries depart, having successfully forged a new link to the outside world. The next morning, a cheerful Carmilla and Lydia head out to greet Hashira. He smiles, wishing them both a warm morning from inside the house. He asks them to construct a beehive for the hell hornets, and they readily agree. He eagerly anticipates the fresh crops he'll soon be able to plant. He tells Carmilla he's counting on her, and she confidently accepts the responsibility. Puffing out her chest, she proudly declares that she has perfected her hoe technique. Lydia chuckles at her enthusiasm, while Hiraku is genuinely impressed by her progress. Hiraku begins clearing a fresh plot of land to accommodate the beehive. He dusts off his hands, deciding the cleared area is finally large enough. With the preparation complete, he gears up to build the main structure. He strains with effort as he hauls a massive stone slab into position. The grueling task of laying the foundation leaves him breathless and drenched in sweat. Next, he meticulously assembles the interlocking wooden frame of the apiary. He adds a stylish roof to top it off, completing his latest handmade project. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he triumphantly announces that the hive is finished. Suddenly, a calm, feminine voice calls out to him from behind. The Hell Hornet Queen has arrived, greeting him and praising his impeccable timing. He notices that she has arrived with only a small retinue this time around. As a gesture of their new alliance, she presents him with a massive honeycomb. He proudly gestures to the new structure, presenting it as their future home. The Hell Hornet Queen thanks Hiraku for the magnificent hive he has constructed. Ever the humble soul, Hashira asks if she'd be willing to teach him the ropes. The queen agrees, immediately dispatching a scout to inspect the new construction. Hashira waits with bated breath, anxious to hear the verdict on his handiwork. The scout gives a glowing review, reporting that the interior is cozy and perfectly insulated. Relieved, Hashira watches as the scout pops its head out to declare its love for the new hive. With the queen satisfied, Hashira promises to take any future feedback to heart. Wanting to add one final touch, he prepares to unleash his unique ability. The queen watches in awe as his divine staff begins to radiate a vibrant green light. He declares his intent to cultivate a floral paradise that the bees will absolutely adore. With a massive surge of power, he plunges the glowing staff deep into the soil. A literal explosion of life erupts as a sprawling, magnificent garden blooms in an instant. The queen is left speechless, staring in utter disbelief at the breathtaking magical display. Though the effort leaves him drained, Hashira is thrilled with the vibrant sea of flowers. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the queen thanks him for securing a prosperous future for her kind. To seal their new alliance, she presents him with a massive dripping honeycomb. Hashira smiles, noting that sugar is the best cure for fatigue before calling for a well-earned break. Lydia chimes in, gathering everyone for an impromptu honey-tasting celebration. They feast on the sweet nectar, drizzling it over soft, pillowy mochi fruit. A few days pass, and a peaceful new morning dawns over the thriving homestead. The demon princess, Carmilla, slowly rouses from her slumber, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She dons her frilly outfit, meticulously adorned with delicate roses. Bubbling with energy, she declares she's more than ready for the day's labor. She offers a cheerful greeting to Lydia, who's already busy tending to the new beehive. Carmilla is more fired up than ever to begin the long-awaited strawberry harvest. However, Lydia suggests they fuel up with a proper breakfast to build their strength first. Out in the fields, the plants are bowing under the weight of massive, perfectly ripe fruit. Hashira patiently guides Carmilla, teaching her how to spot the absolute best berries. He singles out a particularly plump specimen, marking it as the ideal candidate for picking. Lydia holds out a woven basket, signaling for the eager princess to make her move. But suddenly, Carmilla hesitates, a look of thoughtful reluctance washing over her face. She confesses that now the moment has arrived. She feels a strange resistance to picking them. Hashira listens in silence, his expression showing he knows exactly what she's going through. He kneels down to her level, deciding it's time to share a memory from his own past. He recalls his first harvest, admitting he felt it was a waste to pluck what he had spent so long growing. Carmilla is stunned to learn that the experienced farmer once felt the exact same way. She realizes her hesitation stems from the deep care she put into nurturing these plants. Hashira agrees, but explains that harvesting the fruit is actually the ultimate form of respect for their life. With her resolve bolstered by his wisdom, she finally reaches out for the fruit. With newfound reverence, she gently plucks a single, flawless strawberry from its vine. Holding it up like a rare treasure, she proudly declares it the fruit she raised with her own hands. Hashira smiles, encouraging her to take the very first bite of their harvest. She eagerly sinks her small fangs into the sweet crimson fruit. Her eyes sparkle with joy as she declares it delicious, earning high praise from Lydia. Swelling with pride and generosity, she insists that they both try some as well. Hashira asks if she's truly certain, and she gives him an enthusiastic "of course." He and Lydia happily accept her offer, each taking a strawberry for themselves. As Lydia pops the fruit into her mouth, a look of pure bliss washes over her. Hashira takes a bite as well, savoring the literal fruits of their hard work. They both praise the perfect flavor, and Carmilla beams with pride at their words. Lydia suggests that while they're great fresh, they'd make an incredible jam too. Carmilla gazes at the strawberry in her hand, her expression turning thoughtful. She reflects on the unique happiness of hearing others praise what she has grown. Hashira smiles, recognizing that special sense of fulfillment unique to a cultivator. Slowly, the basket fills to the brim with the vibrant results of their shared labor. The unlikely trio continues to work, appreciating the simple beauty of the harvest. A new chapter title appears, signaling that it's finally time for some sweet rewards. That evening, after a hearty meal of smoked meat, the group relaxes indoors. The tiny, doll-like Carmilla curiously asks Hishiro what he's working on. He grins, holding up a skewer of fresh strawberries and announcing his plan for dessert. Lydia and Carmilla gasp in unison, their faces lighting up with pure excitement. Touched by their pure joy, Hashir invites the girls to help him prepare the treats. They shout in eager agreement, absolutely thrilled to join in the fun. He explains the first simple step, washing the strawberries and sliding them onto skewers. The girls find the task a breeze, quickly prepping their own fruit skewers. Next, he instructs them to carefully boil the honey, making sure it doesn't burn. Lydia diligently stirs the pot, watching as the honey begins to thicken beautifully. Hashir tells her it's perfect, instructing her to pull the pot off the fire. They dip the skewers next, coating each berry in the glistening golden syrup. Hashir holds up a coated skewer, explaining that there's one final magical step. He asks Lydia to use her magic to rapidly cool and harden the honey coating. Lydia concentrates, unleashing a wave of frost magic over the tray of treats. "They're ready," Hashir announces, proudly presenting the finished dessert. He declares them grade A candied strawberries, and the girls cheer in pure delight. They all take a bite, a satisfying crunch echoing throughout the room. Carmilla closes her eyes in bliss, exclaiming how crispy and delicious they are. Hashir and Lydia agree that the sweet honey and tart berries are a match made in heaven. They excitedly discuss making more using various fruits from their own farm. Later that night, a peaceful silence settles over the house beneath a starry sky. A radiant moon hangs high above the dark silhouette of the surrounding forest. Kichon, the giant plant guardian, appears to be listening intently to something. Carmilla rests atop her guardian's head, recounting the tale of the delicious strawberries she's cultivated. She muses that the honey from their newly built hive will surely be just as sweet. Gazing up at the vast, star-studded sky, she loses herself in a moment of quiet reflection. She reflects on how drastically she's changed from the person she once was. Thanks to her new companions, she's discovered a world of simple, profound joy. A thorny vine from her guardian reaches out, gently patting her head in a tender gesture. With a soft smile, she realizes that even Ki-chan has played a part in her growth. Fueled by a renewed sense of purpose, she pumps her fists, vowing to keep working hard. Suddenly, Lydia calls out from the porch, telling the princess it's finally time for bed. "I'm coming!" Carmilla shouts back, her voice ringing with newfound happiness. Before heading inside, she bids her massive killer plant a fond goodnight. Kichon gives a gentle shudder as the princess slides down from its head. The colossal guardian settles into the earth, closing its eyes to rest for the night. A shooting star streaks across the horizon, serving as a silent witness to their peaceful new life. The next morning, Cray arrives at the gates, announcing her return to her beloved princess. Hashira and Carmilla rush out to meet her, relieved to see her back in one piece. Cray reveals a cart overflowing with all the seeds and seasonings they had requested. The sheer volume of supplies is staggering, leaving Hashira completely overwhelmed. He quickly composes himself, deciding that a proper homecoming celebration is in order. But as they talk, a strange insect perched on Rent's shoulder catches Hashira's eye. Lydia identifies the creature as an Itoda samudri, a rare thread-spinning ant. She explains that they construct silk nests high in the trees using their own saliva. Realizing Lent brought it for them, Hashira thanks his incredibly resourceful companion. He decides the ant can take up residence in a tree right behind their house. He asks Lent to guide their new guest, and the golem responds with a confident thumbs up. Cray returns, asking Carmilla if she's received any word regarding her father. She announces the Demon King has granted them asylum, much to Hashira's immense relief. Cray then asks Hashira for permission to stay as well, hoping to continue serving the princess. He agrees, and Cray beams with joy, promising to manage all their supply logistics. Hashira is deeply grateful, knowing how difficult it is to source seasonings and iron. He eagerly asks Cray to reveal the treasures she brought back this time. Cray presents the haul, identifying various sacks filled with sugar and pepper. When she points out a white bag of salt, Hashira is moved to tears of pure joy. He inquires about another bag, which Cray explains is chili powder specifically for seasoning meat. Hashira takes in the aroma of the new spices, excited for the culinary variety they'll now enjoy. She then unveils crates brimming with jars of seeds from the Demon Kingdom. Carmilla is eager to start planting, but Hashira advises her not to rush the process. Hashira is also thrilled to see she's brought a fresh supply of vegetables and meat. Cray confirms the boxes are packed with everything they need, ready for use. However, he's truly stunned when she pulls out a massive gleaming iron plate. Kray produces a brand new pot and frying pan, leaving Hashira absolutely speechless with gratitude. Feeling inspired, Hashira declares they'll be having a celebratory barbecue for lunch. However, the three girls just stare back blankly, completely baffled by the unfamiliar word. Soon, skewers of meat and fresh vegetables are sizzling loudly atop a hot iron griddle. Lydia assumes barbecue is just another word for grilled skewers, though Hashira notes there's a subtle difference. A helpful info box appears to explain the technical distinctions between barbecuing and grilling. Carmilla eagerly steps up, ready to season the feast with a vibrant new chili powder. Hashira double-checks that she has the salt and pepper ready, which she quickly confirms. He demonstrates the proper way to prep the skewers, a task she finds surprisingly simple. As she finishes the prep, he instructs her to bring the skewers over to the searing grill. The food cooks with a mouth-watering sizzle, sending a delicious aroma through the air. Hashira remarks on how much more efficient the iron griddle is compared to their old stone slabs. He calls out for the plates, receiving an incredibly enthusiastic response from Carmilla. Lydia joins them, carrying a platter of perfectly toasted fluffy matcha mochi fruit. With the spread finally complete, Lydia announces that it is officially time to eat. The four companions gather around the table, giving a heartfelt thanks for the meal. Hashira wastes no time, taking a massive, eager bite from a freshly cooked skewer. He's instantly moved to tears, completely overwhelmed by the magnificent, long-lost flavor of salt. Lydia sighs happily, noting just how vital proper seasonings are to a good meal. Grace scolds Carmilla for her unrefined eating habits, but the princess is far too happy to care. Hashira explains to Kray that it's been ages since they've enjoyed a properly seasoned meal. Resigned, Kray finally gives up on trying to correct the princess's messy table manners. Hashira chimes in, noting that eating straight off the skewer is all part of the barbecue experience. He encourages everyone to eat their fill before they tackle the task of sowing the new seeds. Before them, the freshly tilled fields stretch toward the horizon, ready for a new beginning. The vast expanse of prepared earth waits patiently under the bright, open sky. With the meal finished, Hashira and Lydia get straight to work sowing the seeds. Under Kray's watchful eye, Carmilla carefully plants the seedlings in neat, perfect rows. The entire group works in harmony, preparing new planter boxes for their rapidly expanding farm. Lydia then announces she'll handle the irrigation, which Hashira gratefully accepts. Closing her eyes in deep concentration, she gathers a surge of water mana between her palms. With a sudden burst, she launches a swirling orb of water high into the air. A gentle, magical rain begins to fall over the fields as Carmilla watches the display in delight. Hashira beams, announcing that it's finally his turn to contribute to the harvest. He kneels down, pressing his hands into the soil to activate his growth acceleration magic. The newly planted seeds sprout instantly, erupting from the earth and maturing at an incredible pace. Hashira then decides he will use the mana stones as a high-grade fertilizer later on. Noticing Kray staring at him intensely, he stops to ask if something is bothering her. She advises that for sustained growth, they must seriously consider expanding their manpower. Confused by the suggestion, Hashira asks her to clarify exactly what she means by that. She clarifies that relying solely on him and Lent poses a significant risk. Hashira thanks her for the valuable advice, promising to give it serious thought. Kray bows politely before calling out to her princess Carmilla. Left alone for a moment, Hashira scratches his cheek, lost in thought. He quietly contemplates his next hurdle, the urgent need for more manpower. An imposing shot reveals the Demon King's castle looming under the full moon. The Demon King holds a massive, crystalline magic stone in his gloved hand. Seated upon his throne, he remarks that the stone is a truly magnificent specimen. He muses that the monster it originated from must have been exceptionally powerful. The idea of someone not just surviving but taming the great forest deeply intrigues him. A sharp, fanged smile crosses his lips as he declares the situation fascinating. Back at the homestead, the morning sun beams down on the roof of their house. Hashira and Lydia are left stunned by Kichan's new gargantuan size. Their plant guardian has evolved into a legendary mother plant, towering over them. Carmilla is thrilled by its power, but Kray recognizes the creature from ancient texts. Kray warns that it could attract an entire army, but Hashira insists everything is fine. He maintains that Kichan is a companion, even as Kray recalls its once tiny form. Hashira then decides to head off and check on the High Elves. He leaves the girls to their task of preserving the food they've recently harvested. He gestures to his silent companion, asking Lin to accompany him. The man and his golem venture past the house and deep into the woods. Suddenly, Hashira halts, spotting something unusual nestled in the canopy. He and Lent gaze up at a massive, intricate nest woven entirely of shimmering silk. He calls out toward the structure, requesting an audience with the ant's representative. A lone ant emerges from the silk, peering down at the visitors below. The insect ambassador quickly scurries down the trunk to meet them face to face. Hashira crouches low, offering the creature a polite and respectful greeting. He introduces himself as Lent's master and the leader of their small community. He proposes a mutually beneficial trade, resources for the ants in exchange for their textiles. The ant gives a sharp, decisive nod, signaling its approval of the deal. To prove its craftsmanship, the ant begins spinning a sample of fabric on the spot. Fine threads of silk stream from its mouth with effortless, practiced precision. In a blur of movement, the ant weaves the silk into a finished piece of cloth. Hashira inspects the sample, stunned by its incredible softness and premium quality. Impressed, he places an order for towels and several large rolls of fabric. He then inquires if the colony is capable of tailoring actual clothing. The ants appear momentarily confused, circling him with curious intent. They suddenly swarm over him, using their silk threads like living measuring tapes. Hashira looks to his stoic companion, wondering if the ants find the task difficult. In the sunny clearing, Hashira teaches a triumphant bonsai pose to his golem, Lent. The lesson is abruptly cut short when a peculiar noise from the house catches his ear. Inside, a violent crash startles Lydia, Carmilla, and Cray, halting their work in an instant. Lydia sounds the alarm as Carmilla quickly zeroes in on the source of the commotion. Fearing the worst, Carmilla rushes ahead, desperately calling out to see if Hashir is okay. Lydia lets out a shriek, completely mortified by the scandalous sight of Hashir's lack of attire. He stands there awkwardly in just his underwear, frantically pleading that it's all a misunderstanding. He explains he was merely being measured for new outfits by the tiny ant-like tailors. Cray stares in disbelief, realizing Hashir was stripped for reference, while Lydia remains dazed. Blushing intensely, Hashir begs them to stop staring at him with such judgmental expressions. He kneels down, politely asking the tiny tailors if they could prioritize making a shirt first. For their diligent work, the insects are rewarded with a platter of delicious mochi fruit. Fast forward several days, and a sense of peaceful normalcy has finally settled over the homestead. Now properly clothed, Hashir announces that it's finally time to harvest their flourishing crops. Carmilla eagerly volunteers to grab a basket, with a loyal Cray following close behind her. Lydia praises his incredible power, but he humbly insists their success was a total group effort. She chuckles, noting that the crop's supernatural growth is definitely thanks to his unique ability. Lydia suggests a hearty vegetable soup for dinner, an idea Hashir thinks sounds delicious. He proposes they catch some fish for the main course, and Lydia heartily agrees to the plan. Suddenly, his face pales in shock as an overwhelming, crushing pressure descends upon them. Both he and Lydia are paralyzed where they stand, wondering what on earth is happening. Lydia's eyes widen in alarm as she senses an overwhelming surge of magical power. "Look up!" she screams, urgently drawing Hashira's attention toward the sky. A regal demon descends, visibly impressed that the settlement is far more advanced than reported. He looks down with an expression of pure sadistic amusement at the scene below. His gaze falls upon the two small figures standing before the house from the rumors. He lands gracefully, admitting he originally thought the initial reports were a massive exaggeration. With a knowing, fanged smirk, he asks if the young man is indeed the legendary Hashira. Hashira stares back in shock, a grim realization finally crossing his face. The Demon King throws his head back and laughs, launching into a grand, arrogant introduction. But he cuts his own speech short, lunging forward with blinding, explosive speed. His face contorts into a mask of predatory hunger as he begins his assault. He marvels at Chichan, recognizing the creature as a legendary, nation-devouring beast. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light intercepts his strike in a blur of pure magical energy. The king vanishes instantly, as Lydia explains she used teleportation magic to displace him. Lydia's face is set in a mask of intense focus and grim, unwavering determination. She quickly tracks the king's new location, pointing him out at the edge of the forest. The king glares back, annoyed that the intelligence reports failed to mention such a monster. He wonders aloud how such an unexpected and formidable power could exist in this place. Hashira glares back, his mind racing to uncover the Demon King's true objective.